I mean, the way we were doing it was there'd be, used tires in the garbage can. So we were always the guys to run the stuff out of the garbage can, whether it's used tires, bent bars we'd take home and straighten, just because the amount of stuff I was going through. Like I said, we were literally taking clutch plates out, and I'd seen my dad scraping them on the cement when we're at tracks and stuff. Jett stepped it up. He's the freaking gnarliest dude right now, and he looks so methodical when he rides. Like, he doesn't look like he's just, pinned and getting sketchy and sending it.
Yeah, but with all that being said, you're probably going to smoke him on a two-stroke at Washougal.
If I can keep from getting lapped by Jett when I'm on the two-stroke at Washougal, that'll be like a win for me.
But before we get into this podcast, we have some breaking news. Manscaped now offers beard products, and they are available in your country. It's time to tame your mane, so say goodbye to all your stubble trouble with Manscaped's new Beard Hedger Pro kit. They have created 4 dermatologist-tested formulations for your post-trim care. First, there is the beard shampoo and conditioner, the beard balm that shapes, styles, moisturizes, and tames for a sculpted look. First off, this cordless trimmer has a rotary wheel that gives you 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard, so no more messy drawers full of extra add-ons. The Beard Pro Kit also comes with 3 free gifts: a beard brush, comb, and scissors to ensure your beard is always ready to impress. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code GYPSYGANG at manscaped.com. Manscaped Beard Hedger. 1 stroke, 1 guard, 20 lengths. Yeah, so they've gone up there. So I'm just in the office by myself. So I was trying to figure it all out.
Hey, you're making it happen.
Oh, that's it. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing good, man. I'm stoked to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, it was super cool when... bring that mic a little bit closer. You can kind of manipulate it to however you want. You can even flatten this bit out and twist it and get it to where you need to get it. There you go.
How's that looking?
And then yeah, sweet. As soon as you signed the Red Bull deal, I was like, okay, this is probably a pretty sweet time to get you on the podcast. And then with motorsport and the whole Washougal thing coming up and moto memes thrown down the way that he has, I was like, you know what, it's probably a pretty good time to get in and do the potty. So I'm stoked that you're here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm stoked. That Washougal race is gonna be sick. It's a bunch of dudes on 2 strokes. It'll be awesome. So
we met last year at OzX, at World Supercross in Australia, didn't we?
Yeah. So I saw you there. I wasn't able to talk to you too much, but we met there. So that was cool.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I was like, when was the last time we saw each other? But I think it was then. So, but yeah, man. So everything's going good. New Red Bull deal. That had to be something pretty exciting. I feel like that's probably one of the pinnacles in our kind of world, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Red Bull deal coming through, and super stoked. It's a quite a bit of different program for me than I've been the last few years. I'd been doing Supercross and all that, and still doing a bunch of social media stuff with vintage bikes, pit bikes, a little bit of it all. So I was. We did Red Bull Straight Rhythm and just a bunch of weird races. Like you said, we were at some of the WSXs and all that kind of stuff, and the Red Bull guys kind of reached out. They're like, hey, we think it's cool that you're doing a bunch of different types of races on different types of bikes, and it worked out nice. Yeah,
when I saw the deal get announced, immediately it just made sense to me. I was like, dude, okay, yeah, this is right, and I think that it's funny. I don't know if you've experienced it, but when it feels like whenever someone gets a Red Bull helmet, there's a bunch of people that are like, wow, that's so sick. And then no matter who it is or what you've done, a bunch of people that go how the hell did he get that helmet? Dude, Hunter, the Berriman. So there's there's I think a vision that Red Bull has for athletes that are much bigger than where they are at the time they get signed. But when I saw that you got the deal, I was like, man, this makes perfect sense. You're to me, you're kind of becoming almost like the Danny McCaskill of moto in a sense, you know. And I think that we've got Berriman in the Red Bull landscape. You know, you've got Berriman that's doing his thing on the free ride imagination, like he's taking it to a crazy level there. And then I think with you, it's a similar vibe, but just in the opposite direction, you know, like riding every type of bike, like, you know, doing these unique builds, and you've got such a unassuming cool style. So I'm really excited for just where you're going to be able to take this in the future.
Yeah, super stoked. Like you said, there's so many different aspects to it that we're kind of doing with the bike builds and all sorts of different bikes and, the different events. And it's not just about, doing Supercross and all that. There's such a following on social media for, all this different stuff. Like you said, Tyler Berriman's so gnarly, man, doing all those huge jumps and, Danny McCaskill, like you were saying, like there's so much cool stuff to be shown that, there's so much potential in this sport that hasn't been shown yet. And I want to help, show it.
Yeah. And I think the social media thing's interesting too, because like you get sent to me a lot. Like anytime you're, like the RM80 video, the 150 video, like you have a really good habit of being able to go viral. And the people that are sending me your videos are people not in moto. It's like there's people from different sports, different motorsports. There's like, downhill mountain bike guys. You're kind of touching a much wider audience than moto as well. And I think that like maybe the traditional motocross and supercross fan might not even have perspective of like the kind of reach that some of those clips can get,
Yeah, absolutely. Like you were saying, like it's not just one crowd watching. I've got kind of all age ranges watching it because I'm doing anything from a Z50 to a 450. So it's kind of cool that it's not just one section of the motocross community kind of watching this thing. We're trying to, build this thing so that everybody's involved. And I just want to show the love of riding dirt bikes. You don't have to be on, a new 450 to have fun on a bike. You can have just as much fun on anything you got. And I've enjoyed trying to show that. And I'm having a blast along the way doing it too.
Yeah, dude, I mean, that's the vibe, It's like just pull this thing out of a shed, make sure it's got some oil, the tire pressures are done, and there's some gas in that bitch, and let's go, And I think that's such a vibe to kind of capture, and like I said, it sort of spreads even further than just like the general moto community too. And I think that, when you're working with a brand like Red Bull, then that's kind of what they're chasing,
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the projects that they've got coming up, too, riding all sorts of these bikes at sick locations with sick dudes and all that stuff. It's really going to get ramped up because this is just the start of it. Like, we signed that deal pretty recently. So, coming in this next little while here, I think everybody's going to be surprised on some cool stuff that we have in the works.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how does a Red Bull deal come apart? Like from start to finish, when do you start thinking that you could get a Red Bull deal? How does the ball get rolling? How did you find out? I mean, because it always feels like there's a pretty cool story that comes along with something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, ever since I was a kid, that's always the dream. I mean, it's everybody's dream. So I kind of knew that I was taking a different route than most guys, just doing the racing in, just Supercross or just motocross or whatever the case is. So I knew that there was, a good thing going for me doing a little bit of everything on all these different bikes. And I had talked to some people before and they're like, oh, Red Bull reaches out to you. You don't reach out to Red Bull. And, if you want to be on Red Bull, typically you got to be on a team, like Red Bull KTM or something like that. And, that was kind of, I knew there could be something there if somebody could see the worth of this social media stuff. And basically I did the the Red Bull Straight Rhythm this year, and I had some of the phone numbers from getting invited and contacted and some of that, and I was hitting them. I was like, what do I got to do to make this thing work? And like I was just saying, they're like, you got to be on a team, you got to do this and that, in order to kind of be under our Red Bull stuff. And then a couple months later, they're like, let's hop on a call. I think you might have some value doing a little bit of all this stuff. So I was like, hey, I'm ready.
Dude, it's so cool. And how did you feel when you actually got the phone call to find out that you were 100% like you're a Red Bull athlete now?
Oh, I was stoked. I mean, we'd been talking, at one point I thought that it was going to get pushed through and signed in January of this year. So that was a long time ago. And then, there's so much that goes into a Red Bull contract that it just kind of kept getting pushed. And I kept having all these teams asking me for Supercross and stuff. They're like, do you want to ride for our team? Like, what's going on? Everybody on social media was just like, yeah, why aren't you racing Supercross? Why aren't you racing Supercross? I couldn't really tell them, So, it took a little bit, but I was so stoked when, I finally got the call that it all went through 100%. Cause I was just like, man, if I don't do Supercross this year and this doesn't come through, then, it's going to be a weird season for me. But, I was super pumped. Everybody around was super pumped. I mean, the whole Northwest is back in this thing and helped me get to this point. So we're all pumped.
That's awesome, man. What did it feel like to put the Red Bull helmet on the first time? And I don't know, does it feel different?
Yeah, I mean, those guys brought that thing over, and the first time I saw it was at my house, and I pulled that thing out, and I was like, dude, this has always been the dream, and it's such a crazy route to get to that point, not the traditional route. So it was definitely an eye opener on different routes, different courses to get to your goals in life.
Yeah, I think that's super cool, man, to, back yourself and see something in, what you're doing and to try and have a point of difference. And it's very, very, very hard to have that level of confidence. And what was it that I guess made you want to walk that path and go maybe a little bit against the grain of your typical motocross and supercross rider?
Yeah, I mean, basically, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a supercross motocross racer. I mean, every kid that rides a dirt bike, that's their goal. Yeah. And we were taking that route as much as we can. I mean, these last few years, I've done supercross, had some good finishes. I had a top 5 in there and everything. And I mean, to make money or make a living and to keep doing supercross is super expensive if you're not on a factory team or, not having some huge sponsors backing that thing. And, I knew all the sponsors love social media. They kind of told me at a young age, like I used to hate social media when I was younger, like phones, all that stuff. But everybody's like, dude, with the stuff that you're doing, like on the daily, if you could just get that filmed and be posting it, like the sponsors are going to be stoked. And so basically my cousin Jensen, he ended up just making me an Instagram account, and he was posting stuff on there for me. And then I kind of saw it was getting traction. I was like, man, like people really do dig all this weird stuff. And so, it was cool to get the sponsors kind of backing behind that. And, racing is a huge part of it, but the social media is also just massive to get to that point. So basically I was doing all the social media stuff in order to race Supercross to get, parts, gear, all that stuff. Everybody was stoked all around. So that's kind of how I started down that path.
How much do you reckon it would cost to race Supercross on a 250?
It's hard. If you're doing it fully on your own, to mod a bike, is expensive, and then to keep it running is expensive, and then you got to pay a mechanic, and then you got to pay for the practice tracks in California. Like it was $75 a day to ride some of those practice tracks in California, and then the travel and just getting to the races, putting it all together, hotels, flights, all that stuff. I mean, it was ridiculous. Like, I was making okay contingency the years I was doing it, but still just pretty much losing money. And it's a tough spot because a lot of guys are really, grinding it out, with not much in return. And it's a passion. Like, we all love racing. We all want to be out there. I enjoy every single second of it, but man, it is hard to keep it rolling.
Yeah, man. Like, it is super gnarly when you think about, like, even just the travel to do the races. I mean, I've spoke about it a bunch of times. People are probably sick of it, but like, to just be a filmer, like, that was what I did. Like, I would go and film the races, and it was so gnarly. Like, I was always sick and tired from being on the planes and doing the flights and stuff. And that's essentially like a factory rider schedule, basically. But if you're like a Jeff Walker or any of those dudes like a Duran Stapleton, or that's like driving themselves to the races, like a Ty Masterpool, I mean, it's just ruthless, man. Like, the level of commitment that you have to be one of those guys is pretty insane.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you got to give those guys credit. Like, I know Kevin Morantz, he does a really good job, kind of showing behind the scenes and what it takes, and, getting people to really back that thing. And it's cool to see, the success that these guys are having. Just like, Ty Masterpool, he's been having some killer rides outdoors this season. And, it's not easy to do that stuff on your own. And that's why it's even more incredible when these guys are getting the finishes that they are. And, huge respect to every single dude out there, especially to privateers, man.
Yeah. And so what does this Red Bull deal do for you? Like, is there enough financial support there now to where it's like you don't have to worry about the hustle to make as much money? Like, essentially this can be like your full-time job now, and now you just got to focus on writing, creating content, coming up with new ideas. Like, is that kind of the freedom that something like this gives you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're able to ramp this thing up to a lot higher level now, and the industry seems to respect it quite a bit more. So we'll be able to. I mean, I'll still be doing some supercrosses, some outdoors, some cool stuff like that, but I'm also going to be showing that we can have some fun while doing it, and on some weird bikes. And we're pretty much just going to ramp this thing up at a larger scale and do some amazing film stuff, cool races, just completely different stuff than the normal. And I'm really excited for it, and it's just the start.
Yeah, dude. So have you been filming with Wes and those guys yet?
Yeah, so I've done a couple videos with Wes. He films that first YouTube video with me in the Red Bull helmet, and then we're also working on a couple more projects right now that are in the works. So super cool dude. I mean, that whole crew has been super fun to work with. I mean, they're super funny, and they've done this forever. I mean, just like you. So it's super cool to be working with high-end professionals like that.
Yeah, man, I bet. No, I think that's like one of the cool things when you kind of get on the program with Red Bull, and you kind of like, you get into that ecosystem. It comes with like Jeremy Matson, you got like the Wes and his crew, and you've got all those, like the machine that's around you, like I'm sure you've got your own channel and your own Instagram and stuff, but I'm sure now you're just going to be plugged into this whole new network of people that can help you, essentially, because like I can imagine that you've got so much stuff that's in your mind, and you've got so many ideas of things that you want to do, and it's like, I guess now that's just putting the pieces together to execute on those plans.
Yeah, absolutely. These things that didn't seem possible are all coming together now, and I'm super excited for not just the ideas that I have, but what others are wanting to see happen. And now it's got the potential to really blow this thing up and make it good, and not just being on the one bike grind of Supercross and all that, which I absolutely love, but I want to show my love for this sport all the way through and through.
Yeah, man. No, definitely. Like you've got like spirit animal vibes, you know. Like I think when people watch you, they see like a guy that's just can ride anything, having fun on anything, and you know, I think that level of stoke and froth kind of like it's infectious in a way, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody is in a position where they want to make whatever bike that they had, you know, cool for when they were a kid and everything. And I really enjoy just, you know, in any size bike. Like everybody's like, oh, you know, if I show up at a KDX, you know, at my local trails, you know, people bag on them or whatever. And that's not how it should be. You know, those things are awesome. You know, XR100s, they're awesome. Z50s, they're awesome. Like every bike is sick. And, you know, like I was kind of saying before, everybody thinks that you have to have a brand new bike and, you know, to do anything or be cool, or, you know, it's not about being cool. It's about, you know, riding your dirt bike with your buddies and just having a blast with it, and, you know, all the good times.
Yeah, no, man, I honestly couldn't agree more. Who are some of the people that you look up to when it comes to content, and I guess where you want to kind of go?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Behrman, like you had mentioned, he's gnarly. Pretty much any of those dudes, you know, really pumping out the content. Like Axel, he's doing some cool stuff. Like he really found his place in all this, you know, massive jumps, serious skills that he's showing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Roxon, he's done some really cool stuff. Like he's not just showing the well, he's showing his love of dirt bikes. I mean, he's out hitting jumps, and, you know, he's doing WSX and Supercross, and, you know, I'm going to race a few outdoors, that kind of stuff. So that's really cool to see. And, you know, all those dudes gnarly on a bike. And it's cool that they're showing it, because, I mean, there's so many guys out there with so much talent, and all you see is them on the TV. You know, you don't know what they're doing behind the scenes during the week, like how gnarly they are and all that. So it's cool to see the ones that do.
And what about outside industry? Like, is there some mountain bike guys that you kind of look up to, or skaters, or like, because I feel like your moto, that's what you do, but the way you do it is kind of more like, I mean, the mountain bike stuff really comes to mind, like Fabio, Danny McCaskill. Like, there's some guys in that lane that I feel like do what you do, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, Danny McCaskill, Carson Storch, those mountain bike guys, it's really cool to see, you know, the way that they've, you know, made their edits and everything, because they're doing some gnarly stuff and not just, you know, competition things. So they're out there grinding away, making these amazing courses and showing their potential and talent. And, you know, I really like watching all the mountain bike, bicycle, BMX stuff. I grew up doing that a little bit, and a lot of that transfers over to pit bikes, like the momentum and everything. So I do enjoy watching a bunch of the bicycle stuff. Those guys are gnarly because they got to be precise. I mean, they're going massive, and they don't got any power to throttle out of things when it goes wrong.
Yeah. No, I think, I guess I can see the impact that you can have in moto in kind of like what those guys do in the mountain bike world too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, the mountain bike guys, there's so many different levels of that too. Like you got the Red Bull Rampage, and then you've got the dudes just, you know, going through trails. But it's cool to see, because those guys aren't afraid of mud. They aren't afraid of snow. They're doing it no matter what. And yeah, it seems like the mountain bike world has done a bit better of a job of showing the social media side of things than like you know, most sports. So it's cool to see that.
Yeah, I think I always would think about that, like when I filmed Dream Ride, the whole concept of that was like, I want to do something that's more like a traditional action sport. I think that one of the things that moto really missed, and it's like purely logistical, is travel. Like, I mean, I'd go on surf trips, I'd go on mountain bike trips, I'd pack my bike and I'd fly with it, or I'd pack my surfboards and I'd fly with them. And like, you just couldn't really do that in moto. And that's what Dream Ride kind of was like, all right, how do we go to a destination, go to like a tropical paradise where it's like that's a place where people want to go on holiday, and then it's like you build something crazy there. And then for the second one in Hawaii, it was like the same kind of vibe, you know. And I think that's probably why mountain bikers, surfing, snowboarding, why other action sports kind of went more towards that free ride sort of lane, is just because it was so much easier to travel than with dirt bikes, you know. So I think that's why it's been a little bit of a slower build into that direction.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you know, you're seeing these snowboarders getting dropped off on the top of mountains with, you know, their snowboards and going down these things, and mountain bikers too. I know, you know, Parsons and Foster and those guys, they've done that some in some of the moto movies, but, you know, it's cool to see that it's transitioning over a little bit more, but like you said, you can't just throw that thing in a suitcase and go to some crazy destination. Yeah. It really takes a lot more thought, effort, and dedication to get this stuff done.
Yeah, but it's just cool. I think that, yeah, we're kind of getting into that era where it's going to start happening a bit more. So let's go all the way back then to the start of your two-wheel obsession. So you're pretty much born into a moto family, is that correct?
Yeah, so my dad and his brother started BBR Motorsports, which started out as a four-stroke performance company, and then transferred over into pit bikes full-time. So when I was a little guy, you know, there was mini moto and all that, and they had a bunch of pros over there, you know, testing and stuff all the time. So I was, you know, exposed to the moto stuff pretty quickly, and I fell in love with it. And my dad, he always says, you know, he never wanted me to be a racer. You know, he saw how, you know, gnarly that was, and, you know, how hard that can be on the families and, you know, your body and all that stuff. So he was always trying to lean me towards more of the test rider sort of thing, like for OEMs and that sort of stuff. And I did that for a bit, and, you know, I really enjoyed just riding and trying to get better. And, you know, I was looking up to guys like Carmichael and Stu and RV and all those guys, and I just saw their work ethic, and it really appealed to me. I was like, I just want to, you know, grind and, you know, work hard just like any other kid does. And so I finally talked my dad into racing a little bit, and you know, it went good. Like I kind of got a little more serious with it when I was 12. He let me, you know, try and you know, go to more local races and that stuff. It went good, and we ended up going to Loretta's on 85s and all that. And, you know, it was great. I loved every second of it. And I was taking it dead serious, you know, at the, from the very start. And I was probably taking it too serious, you know, just really grinding it out. And if I had an injury, I was just going to keep on going with that thing, 'cause I knew that's what the top guys were doing. And, you know, it gets gnarly, but, you know, won some motos in the 125 class at Loretta's and that kind of stuff. And got a Team Green ride after that on 250Fs. Pretty much overtrained myself into, you know, just being burnt out at that point. And, yeah, I had to tone it back a little bit from there and get healthy again and turn pro. And, yeah, we're here.
So what did the overtraining thing, did you get actually sick from it, or?
Yeah, you know, I basically had this mindset where, you know, if you ride the most and you train the hardest, those are the guys that win. And
yeah,
I took that to an extent where, I mean, I was riding 24/7, and I was so skinny and so brittle from it and just working out, and I was going backwards, you know, and I didn't know it, because I was just like, you know, work harder. It'll be, you know, that's the path. And man, by the time I was 17, I was just super skinny to the point where I would even tip over, and shoulder would blow out or whatever, just because I was tired. And, you know, I found out pretty quickly along the way that, you know, recovery is a pretty big part of it, but it unfortunately took me a little while to figure that out. And, maybe even a little bit too late, because I was just going for it. And by the time I turned pro, I still was just grinding too hard, and everybody was trying to tell me, to hold back more than anything. And I just thought, they were trying to discourage me in a way. So it definitely took some convincing, but, after a little while of sitting on the couch, you realize like, hey, this isn't fun. That's not why I'm doing this. Let's get healthy and do this thing and, figure it out.
So when you were training at your gnarliest point, what was 1 week in your life like? Like, let's say the gnarliest week you'd ever trained on a dirt bike and off a dirt bike. Like, break that week down.
Oh, man. I mean, I would get up at, 5:45, run, stationary cycle, do some gym exercises, any of that stuff, get on my mountain bike, rip around a bit, make sure that the bikes were ready to go, and I would just freaking ride from sun up to sun down. My dad would come home. He would try and fix the bikes because, I was going for it. Like, if there wasn't crap flying off the bike the whole time I was riding, I didn't think I was trying hard enough. Like, you could show up at my local track and you would know that, like, I'm going to ride that thing till the wheels would fall off. And good or bad, I was passionate, and I still am. I'm going to ride that thing as hard as I possibly can and get around that track, whether it's ugly or not. And so I definitely had to tone it back a bit. I just wanted it bad, man. Like, I had so many people would laugh when I'd show up at the local track. They're like, there's not going to be one berm that's not blown out, and that bike ain't running by the end of this day. Any bike that I brought, you could bring multiple, and I'm going to ride that thing to its very limit. my dad's probably going to be out there with the clutch plates out, scraping it on the pavement, trying to get some traction out of them. But, it was entertaining for everybody, and it still is, I guess.
So you'd go out there and, like, were you doing motos? You'd be like, I'm doing 20s, and you'd go do a 20, fuel up, do another 20, or like what was it structured?
Yeah, I was just going for 30 plus twos every time I got on the bike, and I wasn't taking much break. And that's hard on the body, man, and it's hard on the bike, and it's hard on everybody around you. So just trying to keep the stuff running. And like I said, everybody was telling me, like, man, like, slow down. Like, what are you doing? You're gonna be burnt out by the time you turn pro. And I was like, more you ride, harder you work. This is it. And a bunch of sponsors, like, they would help me out, and they're like, yeah, like, we'll get you a gym trainer and all that. And so, then I'm going to the gym with a trainer, but it's not a motocross trainer. So they're really burning you in the gym. And then I'd go home, and then I'm going to ride all day too. And I just was making a recipe for disaster. But, all my funnest times, because I was riding from sun up to sun down, 100% effort. And it's gotten me in this position now, so no regrets.
Yeah. I think, like, you don't know what you don't know. I was the opposite when I was racing, like, I didn't have the opportunity to, like, ride that much, and then I'd get to the track and I'd be like, the track sucks, and this my bike's like, just because I didn't know. I'm like, no, this is just what everyone's bike feels like. This is just the track that everyone's got to ride. So it's like, if I was a kid, I look back, I'd be like, oh man, I bet I could have done so much stuff differently. But when you're a kid and you just don't know any better.
Oh, for sure. And it was funny because usually if it's raining or muddy or snowy or whatever it is in the Northwest, most people are like, we're not riding.
Yeah.
And my dad was always sitting there. He's like, dude, just don't ride today, man. Like, it's going to be bad. And I'm doing it either way. Like, I had that mindset, and, he was, supportive 100%. Like, he would make it happen. And, it's gnarly, like the amount of brake pads and everything. And that's why I really appreciate everybody in the Northwest. Like, they all come together and help me do this thing, because the weather, it's not always nice there. And it was funny because, growing up, you see everybody at the track and their parents are pushing them for like, pit boards and lap times and, trying to drag their kid out there and like, jump that jump. I was the opposite way. They were always trying to tone me back. I'm like, I want to do this moto. I don't care if it's frozen solid as a rock. Like I'm doing this thing and I'm going to hit that jump either way. And everybody's like, slow down, man. Like, it doesn't have to be this way. But like I said, I'm just having a blast doing it. And, luckily Team Green was cool at the time with, the amount of stuff I was breaking, but man, it was hard on my dad, man.
So you'd be going through like bulk clutch plates, bulk oil, bulk brake pads, grips, bars, levers, like tires.
Yeah, I mean, the way we were doing it was we'd go to a track, there'd be, used tires in the garbage can. So we were always the guys to run the stuff out of the garbage can, whether it's used tires, bent bars we'd take home and straighten, just because the amount of stuff I was going through. Like I said, we were literally taking clutch plates out, and I'd seen my dad scraping them on the cement when we're at tracks and stuff. He's like, it's the amount of resources that takes to ride that much is just insane. And then we'd buy super cheap eBay brake pads and rotors, and I had at the time I had some KX250 two-strokes back when they were worth nothing that like people were just dropping off at the house. They're just like, whatever it takes for you to keep this thing going, because everybody in the Northwest, they wanted to see this thing succeed with the amount of effort that we were putting into this thing, So it like I said, it wasn't just an effort of me and my family, but the whole Northwest was behind this thing to make sure that we would get to the point where we could go professional with this thing. And I definitely took it to the limits.
Were there many people from the Northwest that kind of like quote unquote made it? Like you had the Hill brothers. I'm not sure like your age compared to those guys, but was it a pretty special thing to have someone like yourself from the Northwest that was like actually making a run at it?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of guys from the Northwest, the Hill brothers, Larry Ward, Ryan Villopoto, Levi Kitchen. He's coming out of there right now. Yep. He's doing super good. Austin Black, Preston Bays flew. There's a bunch of dudes coming out of the Northwest right now, which is super cool to see. Not just the Ryan Villopotos and those guys from this last generation. So it's pretty sick to see, and we have a lot of tracks running up there right now, which is nice, because I mean, back through the recession, if we wanted to ride, it was basically like you drive 3.5 hours to Washougal, and they were about the only place that was open unless you were riding some people's backyard tracks. And that's kind of how we got into the backyard track thing so much. I mean, you guys see me ride so many backyard tracks, it's because there wasn't a lot in the Northwest just years ago, but it's starting to grow, and it's huge up there, and the people are passionate because you can do pretty much year-round riding, because even if you don't want to ride in the mud or snow, there's arena cross, like Monroe Arena Cross. There used to be Clark County Arena Cross, and there's kind of places like you can go over to Eastern Washington, which is the desert, and ride over there. So, the sport is really healthy there just because you can ride year-round, and it's awesome to see.
Yeah, and the Northwest has such an outdoor culture too. I mean, there's so many people that just love to, like, you should put on a flannel, just be outside doing shit. So it's like, it's a pretty cool place to kind of be a motorcycle rider as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the different terrain for motocrossers. I mean, we can go and ride mountains, desert, snow, rain, sun, dust, sand, all in the same day, which is really unique. And it's all pretty close by too. I mean, you can go and ride arena cross, which is super beneficial. I mean, there's not a lot of places for these kids these days to practice their indoor skills. So with the Northwest having that, I think that's why there's so many guys coming out of the Northwest right now, which are pretty dang good at Supercross.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think too, like the backyard tracks breed like some pretty good riders too, because they're like kind of sketchy. You kind of got to know your way around it, like not really getting prepped that much. So I think that there's something to the whole backyard track vibe too.
Yeah, the amount of backyard tracks that are in Washington is pretty good, because with the weather that we have, we can get them packed in pretty nicely, and then they can grass over so they don't erode away too much. So there's quite a few backyard tracks and really good ones, which is super beneficial for us, because I mean, if you're in California or something, you don't quite see as many of those because they're hard to water, hard to maintain, and all that. Whereas Washington, you know, of course it's going to be raining during the winter, but you can still ride it, and it's not just going to be powder. So, you know, getting sketchy, riding roots and rocks and backyard sketchiness, I think that's super beneficial, and that's what I love the most. I mean, just riding in the backyard with your buddies on some sketchy stuff doesn't get much more fun than that.
So, did you always have a track in your backyard growing up?
Yeah. So, we've been working on that track, the ones that you guys see in all the Instagram videos. That's in my parents' backyard. We're on 5 acres, and we've had that track for about 20 years, and it started out as pretty much just a little goat trail. And we've got this little skid steer, and I mean, it's one of those where it's like it's going to run 5 minutes, pop a hose off or flat a tire, whatever the case is. So we'd get it running just enough, and over 20 years, I mean, it's developed into pretty crazy stuff. And my dad always used to build the track, and then, you know, when I was 13 or so, I started hopping on the skid steer, and I made some very sketchy stuff. I mean, people say it looks sketchy now. You can't imagine what I was making when I had no idea how to operate anything. And it was, everybody calls it death cross, you know, they all come over and they look at it and they're like, absolutely not, man. We are not riding that. But we have a little kind of safe pit bike track on one side. So everybody kind of sticks over there, because everybody always tries to ride the main track once, because, you know, they kind of walk it and they're like, you know, it might just be worse walking it than riding it. And then they're sitting there with a broken collarbone 5 minutes later, and it's like, man, I warned you, like, you know. But that's, I mean, that track's been super crucial for helping me get the skills and stuff that I had for Supercross and everything, because we knew at a young age, you know, if you're not hitting whoops and, you know, tight rhythms and all that, you know, you got to get on it as soon as you can. So luckily we saw some DeCoster interviews where he was talking about all that stuff, and we're like, you know, we got to make this thing technical if we want to make it. So yeah, sketchiness.
Dude, that's so funny. One of my good buddies at home, he had this track. He lived like probably an hour and 20 minutes from where we grew up. And he's a pawpaw and banana farmer. And so he had like the sketchiest tracks. And basically every year they'd like rotate the blocks that the bananas were in, because like you have to let the soil regenerate. And so that would be the track for the year. And he had like not even a skid steer, not anything, just like a farm John Deere backhoe basically. And dude, the lifts, he would make these like 70, 85 foot jumps where it's just like this. And it was like sand lifts with huge ruts and bumps, and every time you went there you'd just be like, all right, this is probably the last time I ever ride a dirt bike. And then he'd get the big rippers, and they'd all have like the rows that the bananas were in. And so we would just like rip a track one time through this banana field, and it was just like the most whooped out, gnarly track you've ever ridden in your life. And he was actually like a really good dude, like really good rider. He could have gone pro. He was like racing with Todd Waters and you know, Dean Ferris and those guys. But he literally owns the farm now. So he just was like generational banana farmer. But he used to do 40-minute motos in that sand in like, it's Florida heat basically up there, with no gloves, because he would just go through gloves so much that he just stopped wearing them. So like, dude, there's some like legitimate backyard heroes out there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've shown up at some backyard tracks before, and I was like, yeah, there's nobody that can beat, whoever it is in their backyard
That
track.
owns that
It's
track.
crazy. Oh yeah, absolutely. Just, you'll see it jump and you're like, man, that thing is scary. And they're just like, yeah, I just kept pushing the face a little bit more every year. And it's like, yeah, I see that, but man, but yeah, those are always the most fun days because there's no pressure. Your buddies are there and, you can watch them hit the stuff and yeah, you better hope that you make it.
That's really like the ultimate childhood is when you've got a dirt bike track in your backyard and a half working skid steer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those are always the best times. Like, it's almost weird when you go to a real prep track, like, because I had a track that, I thought was, super crossy in my yard. And then I show up at, Milestone when it's my first year turning pro. And I was like, this isn't that bad. And then you go to the real Supercross and then you're like, oh man, like that's nothing like the California practice tracks. Like, how do you even train for that, And yeah, I mean, it's a tricky thing swapping between all that stuff, especially when you're going pro. Because like I said, we wanted it when I was younger to be tight, technical and everything. And then so that when you show up at a Supercross, it's not going to be as intimidating. I can't imagine what it's like for the, like let's say the guys that come over from Europe, never ridden Supercross, they hop on the Supercross track. That's gnarly. It's huge respect to them.
Yeah, when you see a guy like Tom Vial come out this year, and I mean, people are saying like, oh, he's not having a real good season, like he's not good at Supercross. It's like, well, it's pretty gnarly that he can just show up and like kind of like even to get on TV, like he's getting TV time, so he's doing something right.
Yeah, I mean, it's his first year, and he had some amazing rides in Supercross, and I know he was really looking forward to this outdoor series, and Southwick he showed what he can do, and I'm sure as time comes on, like he's going to get more practice and more training because from what I heard, he didn't have a lot of time on the Supercross bike before this season.
Yeah. So I'll just go back to this talking about your dad before you guys switched to pit bikes. So was he doing like XRs and XR 200s, 250s, 400s, all that sort of stuff? Like, and then like the old YZ or like the early YZF stuff. Is that kind of what the business started as?
Yeah, so pretty much they were making parts for all those bikes, and they always had this. They pretty much saw the modern four-stroke in their heads before it was a thing. Like they were riding these XR 400s and things, and they knew that those had the potential in a race form to the point where it could be the bike of choice. So what they were doing is, let's say they had an XR 400, they were making they made an aluminum frame for that thing with 96 CR250 geometry because that was the bike at the time, and they had many different versions where they were doing that with basically trail bike motors, and like Honda and all those guys were super interested because they were kind of working on something similar too. So it was cool to see that they were part of that process of like, this has potential, this can be amazing. A four-stroke doesn't just have to be, conventional forks, putting through the woods. They can hit a Supercross triple from the inside, and they could see that vision, and, all these years later, I mean, look at it.
Yeah, man, that is crazy. Like, so when I grew up, my dad had XR 400s, XR 600s. That was it in our house, and he used to do like motocross, like They used to call it, in Australia, they had the Thumper Nats. And so it was, kind of like late 90s before all, like the actual four strokes kind of came in, and they'd race these grass tracks all over Australia. It was a super popular series. And have you ever heard of a guy called Jeff Ballard?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he had this shop, Ballard's Off-Road. Your dad might even know him because it was sort of like the same time. He was, back in the day, it was actually called XRs only. Was Yeah. So anyway, that was like a huge scene in Australia. So I mean, that was some of my first introductions to bikes, was like XRs in the shed. But dude, that was such a rad bike, eh?
Yeah. I mean, the XRs, and there was a few, like, you know, the Husaberg and those that were coming through that were kind of, you know, you could see the potential. Like the carburetors were sketchy on these 4-stroke race bikes when they were coming out with them, and everybody was like, you know, I don't know. And you know, that Doug Henry YZM 400, like super gnarly, and that kind of switched the whole sport to the point where, you know, you can hit these jumps and hit the insides of the corners on a 4-stroke. They're not just heavy tank off-road bikes, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's so cool that your dad was kind of in that moment in time. Like, what got him into bikes? Like, did his dad, right? Like, is it just a full family, like a family thing, or?
You know, so it was my dad and his 2 brothers, and they started out as a BMX shop, Brown Brother Bicycles, and they were racing bicycles mostly, and they saw dirt bikes, and they saw Bob Hanna, and that basically switched them over, like Bob Hanna, the DG stuff. And so they all saved up together and bought, you know, a little 80 as a kid. And, you know, their parents, they you know, my grandparents, they weren't into it very much, you know. They're like, you know, you can do it, but you got to do it on your own, you know. So it made them really want it. And they were more into the bikes than the riding itself. So they were having fun, you know, making cool parts for them. And, you know, in high school shop class, like they were working on dirt bikes and making cool parts for those things. Well, you know, everybody else just wanted to race them. So that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. And then, so when does it switch from the 4-stroke, the big bike 4-stroke stuff, into the BBR that most people know now? Because, dude, I remember being a kid and having like Motocross Action magazines and like flipping through the pages and seeing like the BBR alloy frame for the 50s and the 110s and like the full modded CRF 150 build back in the day. Like, so I know that BBR brand from like my childhood, you know, like it was such a impactful brand in that pit bike kind of explosion.
Yeah, I mean the pit bikes, you know, the XR100, it's been around forever. All that stuff. I mean, they were having a blast just working on those a bit, because like you were saying, like the XRs had such a huge scene, and then the XR50 came out and everybody was riding those things. And so they started making parts for those, and you know, people were stoked. I mean, they were building up pit bikes huge, and you know, they kind of switched over to full-time pit bikes, and it's been great for them. And they've had a lot of parts and things over the years that are you know, that were developed kind of ahead of their time for even pit bike stuff. So it's been cool to see, and the whole perimeter frame era and all that. And, you know, the CRF 110 now being fuel injected, everybody's riding those again. So the pit bike scene kind of even blew back up, you know, with the whole COVID CRF 110, everybody's riding those. And it's been great. I mean, BBR has been killing it with that stuff. And
did you ever have like the growing up where you thought you were just going to kind of take over the family business, or has that always been in like the back of your mind when you're done with racing? Because you're so on the borderline of like loving to build bikes, and you like the dirt bikes themselves as much as racing them. Like a lot of times there's one or the other, but it seems like you're pretty much in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun growing up to be around the business and helping test the parts, and I'm still doing that like on the daily, and seeing the development and you know, the work that goes on behind the scenes to run a business like that and everything. And I really enjoy seeing that aspect of it. I haven't you know, been able to be on the business side of it as much as I would like to, just with the racing and riding and everything I've got going on. But I would definitely like to kind of go that route as things go on here. But, just kind of got to see down the road what's going on. But right now, my dad's still loving it. My uncles are still loving it. So it's been good. I mean, pit bikes, who doesn't love them?
Yeah. And so you were literally a kid and they were building these pit bike parts and you were like the test rider for the family business as a kid.
Yeah. I mean, like I was kind of saying earlier, like I would ride everything a lot. So I would, if they had something that needed tested, I would put the hours on it. I would, go big on the thing. If they thought that, something was weak or whatever, I would tell them, real quick if something was going to bend or not. And then just on the dynamic sides of it all and, how the bike rides and all that. I really enjoy that aspect of it. Even with, just the simple things like, a tall seat and how stiff it needs to be and all that. Yeah. There's so much that goes behind it. That people don't realize. It's not just putting a seat foam on a seat or, something like that. So it's been cool helping be part of that.
Yeah. And I'm sure that really helps develop you as a rider too, where it's like, you're not just, cause most kids, they just go out, they do the moto that they're told to do. And then they come back and, suspension and like all the setup and stuff like that is kind of just left up to their dad to get right or their mechanic or whatever. But for you to be at a young age, okay, go and just tell us about this seat foam or tell us what you think about this swing arm. Like that's a lot of cool experience to get as a young kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that experience has, benefited me for on the big bike stuff too. Like it's funny because I used to be the guy where when I was younger, I would have to have my bars just right, my levers just right, or it would drive me crazy. And now I'm, riding all these weird, 80s bikes, just stuff that's literally rattling itself apart. And I had to learn, like it's okay to not have everything perfect. And I've taken it to the point where it's the opposite. Like I'm going to ride it like it is what it is, like just like they did back in the old days, like, stuff falling off, whatever the case is. But definitely for like Supercross and that kind of stuff, it was beneficial to know what the bike is doing. Because I mean, every click on the suspension, all that counts at the highest levels. So it was nice to have that experience and be able to, kind of transfer that over.
Did you feel like that, like you could feel that skill developing over time? Because I think that's a skill a lot of people wish they had, even just the average guy to know. Like I had a thing, I rode Sunday and the time before I rode, my bike was shit but I just didn't really have time to fix it. I didn't have time to play with it. So I did like 2 terrible motos and then just left. I was like pretty disappointed. And then I rode again then I went to World Supercross. I had like a couple weeks off, went back to the track and then did my first moto and I was like, fuck, this thing still sucks.
Yeah.
And I like went and I actually made a bunch of changes and my bike went way better. Like instantly, first lap, I went out and I was like, oh, thank God. Like this actually, I'm going to enjoy doing this moto. And but that was honestly one of the first times where I've ever been to a track. The bike sucked and then I made it better and left like happier. That felt like a milestone in my career almost. So like, was that a thing that you could feel developing over time, or it just was sort of second nature? Like you just didn't even know that you were getting that good at it?
It was kind of a thing that developed. And one thing I learned, kind of the hard way is it's really easy to make your bike worse. Because the amount of hours that the OEMs have into testing their bikes off the showroom floor, like unless you're, not in the weight range of the bike or, not in the height or whatever the ability is, then the bike's going to be pretty good out of the box if you're, it's going to be set up. So to do anything to it, you better know what you're doing. Like I've had it a million times where I'll have a bone stock bike, I'll get suspension done, and I'll test it back to back, and it's like, okay, we got to start with a platform and, go up from there and, keep progressing. Whereas most guys, they wouldn't know. They just go with it. And then they're like, man, I'm not feeling good. I'm getting arm pump. Same thing with triple clamps. Like a lot of guys, they get aftermarket triple clamps and they put them on before they even ride the bike. So they don't know what the bike is doing. So my advice to guys a lot of time is just do one little thing at a time, and then you'll know what the bike is doing. Or suspension wise, click it all the way stiff, all the way soft, just so that you know what the bike is doing. And then you can go from there and, kind of get the knowledge of what each thing is doing on the bike,
Yeah, and I think that, at least for me anyway, it's so hard to just feel it on the track. Like, in my mind, or the thing that's kind of like helped me lately is to try and learn more about the theory. Like, what's actually happening? Like, what does a spring do? Like, why is there a certain sag rate? Like, why is it that it does what it does? And even, actually, shout out to Michael Lindsay. I was watching a video on Vital. He made it like years ago, and it was about suspension tuning. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but he basically was talking about, like, think about compression not as hard or soft, but as like speed. So like your compression is like how fast the suspension is going to compress versus how slow the compression is going to compress. And I was like, dude, that actually makes so much sense from like a theoretical point of view, And then so it's like when you're going out on the track, if your handlebars are here, if you hit a bump and your handlebars go up, then it means your compression's too slow instead of too hard, So it's even like just thinking about, or like putting some effort into the more technical side of it, like why things happen, what certain things will change the relationship between certain things. I think that's almost as important in my head, at least, as to being able to feel what it's doing. Because a lot of times, like you're going down a hill, you're hitting like 25 bumps, you've got 25 different compression and rebound strokes in like 1 second. It's like, all right, so you're going to be able to actually feel what is happening there. And I think that's where, if you're the kind of guy that wants to change stuff on his bike and you want to figure that stuff out, it's like it almost pays to learn the theory as well as just the practice out on the track.
Yeah, absolutely. Super beneficial to know what your bike is doing and have it set up right for you. Like, I can't tell you how many guys come up at our local track, and they're just like, what do I do for my suspension? I can't figure it out. It's doing this, it's doing that. It's like, first step, like, have you checked your sag? Yeah. And they're like, no, what's sag? What's all that? So, it's been cool kind of, trying to explain it and help guys and all that. But, it's beneficial to know what's going on because, like you said, I mean, there's so many adjusters and clickers on the modern day bike. It's easy to go backwards. Like even myself, I'll be testing suspension and I'll think that, it's way too stiff going down a hill when really it's too soft and it's just too far down into the stroke. And it's easy to confuse that stuff if you're not really trying around on it all.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, it was only a couple weeks ago, I got some new forks given to me, and I was just wanted to get them. They weren't exactly set up right. Like I just kind of put them to where they came, and it wasn't 100%. And it was the first time where I took a screwdriver and I went out on the track after I'd finished riding, and I just did a section, rode back up to the top of the hill, wound the rebound all the way out, did the section again a few times, went all the way in, did the section again a few times. And like, I'd never really done that, and it was so beneficial to just spend that 20 minutes of just dicking around with it. I mean, I kind of went back to where I was, but just to have a bit more like extreme understanding of what the bike's doing too. I think a lot of times guys will be like, they'll do 2 clicks and then they'll go ride, and then they're like, no, and then they'll do another 2 clicks, and then they go. It's like you're sort of just not really getting enough of like polarity to tell. And even that, it's like I just don't know how many times people do that on a regular basis.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the the going one click at a time, it can be frustrating, but you're like, am I making progress? Am I not making progress? And it's so crucial, especially like even at the Supercross level, with the amount of teams that they a lot of times there'll be a factory part, and the rider doesn't want it because it feels stiffer, but the team wants you to run it because it's safer or more rigid, or it's frustrating sometimes at that level, because what the bike feels like if the bike is comfortable riding Supercross, it's probably not set up right because you're not able to bash into stuff and all of that,
Yeah.
So it's a fine line of what's good and what's not at the very highest level, and it's frustrating at times. I see it a lot. Like, I think James was talking about with Masterpool, between the difference between the factory bikes and a stock form bike. Like, a lot of times on the factory bikes they'll have their frames all welded up, make it rigid and all that, and when the factory bike is good, it's really good, and when you're having an off day, it's gonna feel really off. And that couldn't be more true. When he said that, I was like, that makes sense. And I haven't had much time on any factory bikes, and just the stuff that we try, that can be true with.
Yeah. And I think that it's been crazy for me to watch. Like, I love KTMs. I love the KTM 350. That's my favorite bike, but I'm still on the old frame, and I'm not in a rush to change. Like, I've got all my parts and all that sort of stuff. Like, I feel like I'm real comfortable on that bike, but you can see the difference between the last generation frame and then this new generation KTM frame is so much stiffer. And then you're seeing Cooper Webb not want to ride that bike outdoors. You're seeing all those guys go, like, I think AP's running stock forks with the cone valve inserts instead of 52s. And so it's so weird to me that manufacturers now, I mean, I don't know so much about the other bikes because I haven't spent that much time on them, but it's like they're just going stiffer and stiffer and stiffer and stiffer at like the OEM level. And I mean, I know you've got like 96 CRs. I've got one of those bikes. You ride one of those things and it's like the frame flexes when you kickstart the thing. Which it's not the best for like longevity, but if you compare that bike there to like a 2023 KTM 450, it's like, dude, what are we even riding right now?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, that 96 CR252 stroke, still one of the best bikes that was ever made. Like, I'll get on that thing and, I'll have, a 450 out there, a modern 450, and then my dad will have his 96 CR252 stroke out there. And I can't tell you how frustrating it is when I do some lap times for fun between the two, and the 96 feels better, rides better, lap times are better half the time, and it's like, man, because that bike was skinny, the suspension was pretty good, and it handled like a dream. And it's like you said, the steel frames, they wear out though and all that, but Honda, that 96, man, they had that thing dialed.
Yeah, and the difference though, like, how do we get from that bike, which everybody loved, to the bikes that we have now, that it's literally like your teeth are gonna fall out sometimes? Like, if you're not pushing super hard and like got your bike dialed in, it's like your teeth are gonna rattle out of your head at times.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the bikes these days are, like you said, extremely rigid, and I think going through the whoops and Supercross and all that, with them being more rigid, they are more consistent, at least for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an aluminum frame guy, just the sense of it's consistent. Like, if I'm going to bash that thing into a hole or hit a rut or whatever, it's not going to flex around and rubber band me off the bike. And I've really struggled with that on steel frame bikes. And I think, KTM, They do have that new design with their, where their shock is mounted and everything, which is, when I talk to them, it's better for the whoops and everything. I haven't spent a lot of time on that new frame either. but it's definitely stiff, and I know some guys are complaining about it, but at the same time, I'm like, that KTM frame can be a struggle, but I really like the aluminum frame at the same time. So it's like, the steel frames almost need to flex a little bit and not be stiff, because they have that, deflect feeling. Like you said, that last generation KTM, that frame was, pretty dang good. And I get it. Like, for most guys, the steel frame, way better. Like, I would recommend it to, most guys. I'm a steel frame guy, I'm an aluminum frame guy through and through. It's what I grew up on, though, with, the BBR aluminum frames. So I like a really rigid bike, and I don't like that thing flexing.
Yeah, okay. So, but then that's like a juxtaposition between the 96 being your favorite bike.
Exactly. Like, it's a hard, it's a hard place, because, like, the 96, most fun bike to play on. You can go extremely fast on the thing, and then it's like you got the aluminum frame 4-stroke, more heavy, more powerful. You can get the job done on it, but it's more of a struggle.
Yeah. So what's your favorite alloy frame these days? Like, what bike do you think really nails it?
I've been riding the Yamaha 450. I really like that bike. I know that the current one, the 23, guys are saying, it's rigid, but kind of like I was saying, I like that really rigid feel. My favorite aluminum frame ever was 2016 CRF 250R. That thing, like, the geometry of it, the head tube angle, that's been my favorite aluminum frame ever. That whole bike, like, people said, those 4-stroke Hondas were slow those years, and out of the box maybe, but cams in a piston, and that thing revved to the moon. And I really like that whole bike.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why, it's just the moto nerd in me, but I love the generations of, like, different frames, how they feel. Like the 2012, I've got a 2012 CRF 450 with a 98 CR 250 motor in it, and I haven't like spent the time to get it fully dialed and kind of done yet. But I mean, you ride that thing, and that's like such a cool, light feeling bike, and I think that was a frame that I liked, and a 450 that felt pretty comfy back then. But I was at Trentino MXGP this year, and Roman Fevra has this like custom Cowie factory frame, and like, dude, that thing, I've never seen a bike handle that good in my entire life. And like, you could hear this like dull thud when he hit bumps, and I'm just like, man, that thing just sounds like so good.
Yeah, one thing I gotta say about those Cowies, man, like, they are, pretty dang spot on the setup. The peg to triple clamp to bar position and bodywork, Cowie always seems to nail that stuff so well. And the frame, flexibility, all that stuff. That's one thing, like, with the Cowie that's really impressive every time I ride one. And I'm excited to try that new one that they just came out with, that next generation one. But like you said, it looks like it's running really good, if that's the production frame on that thing.
Yeah. I'm keen to try one of those bad boys myself. So what is your favorite Honda 2-stroke of all time? Is it the 96, or is there something else in there that tickles your pickle too?
Oh man, the 93 to 96, like the 93 CR252 stroke was even more flexy.
Yeah.
So it's even more. It's like a big old couch ride because the seat's pretty big, but it's skinny, and like you can go fast on those bikes with less effort. I feel like, of course, it's a 2-stroke, so you gotta keep it revved up and everything. But it's like, to go really fast on a 450 or something, it takes a lot more effort to do it right. Like there's a fine line, because like a 450 you can sit down and flip the throttle and you're going to make the jumps. But to go really fast on one, it's going to take a lot of effort. Whereas like I hop on those 90 CRs and they're just so comfortable because the suspension's soft, steel frame, really flexy. I really like those. We have a 1987 CR125. I also really like that bike. Just the generations of the bikes being skinny like that is my favorite thing. I mean, I'm not the tallest guy in the world, so I really like a little feeling bike, and I'm always riding little bikes, and those Hondas always felt, pretty small to me. So that's why I think I like those things so much.
Yeah, and the motor was really good on those bikes too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like those CR250s before the RC power valve.
Yeah.
I mean, so good. I've had the RC power valve one too, and I've had it run super good, but a bit inconsistent. And I've heard that the ignitions on those, kind of play a factor. I heard the ignitions kind of go bad and mess with it a little bit. I don't know if that's true. I haven't tried it myself, but yeah, that older CR250 engine, still my favorite. Out of all the 252 strokes, still, I mean, there's the KTM, the new fuel injected KTM, which, I mean, it's good, kind of a laggy feel on it. And then there's the YZ 252 stroke, which is, honestly pretty similar motor to the Honda. And then there's that CR252 stroke, and that thing, bottom to top, so good. They McGrath had them dialed in those eras, man.
Yeah, and dude, talk about like the right guy on the right bike for just a complete era of domination. Yeah.
I mean, he had some amazing skills on those things, and I mean, he developed the whole sport with that freaking bike. So it was pretty cool. And to, when he switched and, went to Yamaha and everything, then, he developed that bike into something really good too. Like, I don't know if it was, necessarily him, but, those manufacturers were stepping it up so much to get him a bike to really showcase everything that it was sick.
That really was a crazy era of development, eh? Like they went, if you go from like an 89 CR250 to a 93. So that's a 4-year difference in a motorcycle. And that was revolutionary.
Oh, absolutely. And not that long before that, I mean, they were running dual shocks. And it was kind of crazy to see, from, let's say, when Honda had that aluminum frame in 97 to their last two-stroke in 07.
07, yeah.
Yeah, the development wasn't, that much different, like, compared to the 10 years before that. So it was kind of, crazy. And then, obviously, it went to the 4-stroke and everything. But, the development within the 90s to the 2000s era was crazy.
And man, so my best mate Sammy, he just got a so in COVID he bought an 07 CR250 that was like original basically, and I bought a 04 YZ250. I wanted the last of the steel frame of that bike as well, and we were going to do like a build off. Mine's still in a trillion pieces and his is done. And it is the sickest bike I've ever seen. Like, he is done. Like, they did it looks better than brand new. He's got the carbon fiber tank on there, all the guard, like all the, like the chain slider, the rear brake, all the guards are carbon. Like, the thing has been vapor blasted. It's got like a cone pipe on it, just literally everything, bro. And it's like, that bike's damn near 20 years old and it still looks as good as any bike ever made, ever. It is just, they completely nailed that design.
Oh, 100%. Like those last generation Honda aluminum frame 2-strokes were unreal. Like we've got some CR125s of those eras, and they're amazing the way they were set up. The linkage ratio, the forks, shock, all of it, unreal. I mean, Honda was so good at setting up those bikes. The seat, the way that it's set up and easy to work on, and all these years later, I mean, if Honda released that same bike, I mean, it would still be amazing to this day and age, like you were just saying. And you look at Yamaha, I mean, all they've done since the last bunch of years is update subframe, tank, and body pretty much on their 250. And if Honda could have done that same thing and kept on selling them, I think it would have been sick. I mean, that bike, it stood the test of time.
Yeah, man. And so what about CR500s? How do they, what place in your heart does the CR500 have?
The CR500 has a good place in my heart, man. Like, they're such, I mean, killer bikes. Like, out of the box, like, the things are so fun to ride because, I mean, like we were just saying, those steel-framed Hondas with the big seats, like, pretty easy to ride and super fun. My issue with it is, like, I would ride the thing every day. I keep bending that frame, though. And we switch the frame, and then we gusset it and get it all good again, and then we bend the frame again. But that's just part of the vintage fun sometimes. That's just what happens. And I see a lot of dudes putting those bikes in aluminum frames and everything, and yeah, shaky with weird geometry, but I see why they do it for sure. And I've heard there's some kits to do it like pretty easily now, but I like the the 90s feel of how it is, and riding it like they were back in the day. But the bike that I want to try and ride is I've never ridden a KX500, and I've heard they're amazing with the power valve and everything. Because I mean, the CR like absolutely rips. My buddy Brian, he did the motor in it, the porting and everything, and he spent like 6 months making this CR500 that he put his life into basically every day. And he was shimming the transmission just right and everything. And so my CR500 is just absolutely freaking dialed, thanks to him. And everybody's like, you gotta try KX. So I gotta see how it stacks up compared to that.
So what are your tips to riding a CR500? Because it's such a unique bike. I don't feel like you can just ride it like any other bike. So if you had to just explain to people the best way to ride one of those bikes, what would be your advice? Well,
first off, check your environment around you, because you might be bouncing off of it, honestly. But, the 500, you got to respect it because, it feels mellow, especially in the stock form. They have the big flywheel effect where they kind of spin up slow. But man, that thing, once it's going, like with that frame being so flexy and stuff, if it rubber bands, it will throw you on the ground like pretty easily. and I always see people debating, if a 450 is faster or CR500. I mean, for raw power, the 500's definitely like faster. It's gnarly to ride. The 450, you'll physically go faster on it, 9 times out of 10, just because it's easier to ride and all that in the stock form. But the 500, if you respect it, then you're dialed. I mean, I see dudes rip those things in the trails all the time, even, and it takes a different animal to do that, but gnarly.
So whereabouts are you riding that bike in the power? Like what's the strategy when it comes to actually getting around a track on those things?
Right in the mid, because I see a lot of guys, they're short shifting them too much. They're not even getting on the power band. I mean, they don't have a power valve on those bikes, so you kind of got to run it in the mid. Obviously, it falls on its face pretty quickly when you rev it out too much, being that big a bore. So right in that mid-range power, you have to shift it a lot. Like, you hear guys, you have to shift to 125 so much. CR500, you got to shift that thing the whole time, brop, just to make sure that you're in that power perfectly and not, gonna, spin or lug or bog. which, I mean, that's the fun of a two-stroke, though. So that's what makes them so fun.
Do you ever think about the guys like Jean-Michel Bale and Jeff Ward, like Jeff Leask, those guys that just were complete animals back in the day on those 500s?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I watch those videos on YouTube all the time of those guys back in the day, and, you know, like Danny Magoo Chandler on his, RC 500 and all that, like, unreal how gnarly those guys were getting on those things. Like Jeff Ward, he was taming the beast, and he wasn't like, some super tall guy or anything.
Yeah.
So, huge respect to those guys. I mean, and they were riding them on, those weren't prep tracks. I mean, you see Carlsbad and those, like, it looks like they're riding those suckers on ice. And so it's pretty cool to see. I mean, huge respect to those dudes.
Man, I don't know if you would have ever seen it, but there's a video on YouTube of the 1992 Motocross Nations. And Jean-Michel, have you seen it?
Yep.
Dude,
yeah,
Jean-Michel Bale. I've raced that track, and it is so gnarly, dude. And like Jean-Michel Bale literally looks like Jett Lawrence, just like hopping around that whole track, standing up. He smoked everybody on an absolute animal of a bike.
Yeah, unreal. I mean, I would love to see, one of those bikes just rip again. One of those factory 500s. I want to see somebody on one again, just to be around it. Even, if I could go back in time, I'd definitely watch, 500 National. I think it'd be unreal. I mean, there's 500s, bring them back.
Is there a part of you that sort of thinks that you were born in the wrong era? Like, you would have loved to be one of the guys that was like racing. Maybe like, what is the era then? Is it like the 89 to 95, like the end of the 80s, the start of the 90s? Is that like your sweet spot where you wish you could have raced?
Yeah, for sure. I think, mid to late 80s to early 90s, that definitely looks to me like the most fun era, just with all the two strokes and the development that was going on. And, those guys were just sending it. They weren't trying to finesse those things around the track, and they were just going for it, which is really cool to see. Like these days, everybody's really smooth going around that thing. You'll see guys sending it and stuff, but not like the two-stroke days where they had to make that thing have momentum all the way around the track, no matter what, whether they were bouncing off a dude or a tree or what.
Yeah. Do you think that like you can tell the way that the style's evolving? Like I feel like this year with Jett doing what he's doing, like, I think everyone now is going to have to just start to look at him and go like, okay, I just can't ride like I used to. I need to try and figure that out. Or do you think that's what pros are going to try and start to do now with how dominant he's been? Or do you think that like the old way can kind of still work?
With the 450, the way that Jett's riding it and everything, I mean, it's hard to do any better than that, obviously. I mean, nobody's touching him currently right now. It's going to be interesting to see, everybody back healthy and everything. I mean, Jett is on it right now, though, and for the sport, I think it's really good to see kind of that new age style. He's the first guy, kind of bringing that to the table, him and Hunter, which is pretty cool. I mean, there's still some other styles coming up though. Like, I mean, Deegan, he's a rever and some of those guys. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how Jett develops his style too, the more he gets used to the 450. But he is so good on that thing, and not making mistakes. Like, I think what he's got going is, he looks like, Ricky Johnson going around the track, where he's not, using unnecessary energy, or, he's hopping the bumps. It's unreal, and it's going to be interesting to see these next few years if everybody else changes their style up, or if they keep perfecting what they got going.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm interested for with the next couple of years, because I think that so like everyone knows I'm a huge Hayden Deegan fan, but yeah, I think his second moto at High Point was probably his best moto of the year, because it looked like he was really picking his way around the track and not overriding because I think that the danger that you get when you're sending it the way that he does, and that's kind of like an American style. Like, Americans have such a unique style for motocross, and I mean, they're the only ones that really do supercross, but it's just that super aggressive, send it to the moon, intensity times 1,000. But I think nowadays with like the 450 so fast, like I think you can do that on a 250, but then I think that when you get into the 450, it's just a different kind of deal. And I think, yeah, second moto at High Point, I was looking at Danger Boy, I was like, all right, he's kind of got that mix of like the send, but also to be able to, you know, pick his way around the track. And then Southwick, it just looked like the wheels kind of came off the wagon a bit for him, because he was just charging so hard. And it's like, okay, you've now come up against a track that just does not reward that. And I mean, I saw a video today, I think it was in Tommy's video that he did from Southwick. Jett literally jumped one of the rollers into the face of the next like big roller, and then doubled all the way over it, and then doubled out. So it was like he just rhythm sectioned an entire straight at Southwick, took zero energy, barely was on the ground, smooth as hell. And it's like, to me, I'm like, oh well, that's probably the new way to do this thing. But that's so many years of development on Jett and Hunter and Darren's end, to where it's like, I just really don't know how dudes catch up to that now.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, he made Southwick look like a whole rhythm section, and it paid off. I mean, it worked for him. He said he was really tired, you know, at the end of that second moto in the interview or whatever, but I guarantee everybody else was, you know, freaking smoked, because they were just pounding that stuff. You know, like you said, you know, Deegan right now, he's sending it a little bit, but I definitely agree with you that he's figuring it out, and I'm excited to see where he goes the next few years too, just because his passion, like, he really wants to win, and that's cool to see. Like, he's not holding anything back, and he's not letting any pressure get to him, which you know, the sport's pretty exciting right now. Like, there's a lot of guys coming through, like, that are kind of switching it up, and yeah, I mean, there's all the Stasic generation, they're all coming up too. So it's gonna be a pretty sweet era for the sport here these next few years.
Yeah, I think it's a good point about Hayden. I mean, he almost like wills his way to he's got the red plate right now. He's halfway through his rookie outdoor season and he has the red plate. I mean, Hunter's had 2 issues, obviously, but it's like, that's how the sport goes. Like, that's how points work. If you don't finish the motos, you don't get the points. And it's like, even if you're the best guy, and it's like, that kid has just found himself in these crazy positions. He did the same thing in Supercross. He's done the same thing in motocross. And it's like, there's just a guy that wants to win so bad, that's doing everything he can to do it. And he's putting himself in the positions, and then it's almost like the universe is rewarding him for, you know, being in those positions. But yeah, I think that's going to be the challenge for him going forward, is like, how can he adapt his style? Because like, Jett looked beatable on a 250, right? So that to me says that there's a way that there's like more than one way to skin a cat on a 250F. Like, you can charge, it's not going to tire you out. You can kind of overpower it to a certain degree. And there's guys that, like, Jett was doing that same sort of stuff, but the reward wasn't there in the same way as what it is on a 450. It's like, he's just doing the same thing that he did on a 250, but on a different motorcycle, and the reward for playing that game on that bike is like way more than on a 250. So it's like, but then if Deegan starts figuring that stuff out, and then transitions a little bit of his gnarliness to the 450 with a combination of like the way that, you know, that Jett does it. I mean, it's that like the thing that then leapfrogs, you know, because that's the coolest thing about our sport is we're just always in this progression, you know, like McGrath was so smooth and so stylish and so calculated and like didn't use that much energy, and then Carmichael came along and like almost did the opposite, and then Bubba kind of did both of those things, you know. So it's like we're in this constant evolution, and you know, I think we've got like maybe one of the most exciting couple of talents since James, really.
Yeah 100%. And you know, like you were just mentioning, you know, James, Ricky, Reed, that was a super sick era to watch too, because, you know, watching those three guys in their prime all battling it out, you know, that's pretty rare thing to see. Like usually you see, you know, one guy kind of peak and dominate at a time, whereas, you know, that era of Stuart, Carmichael, Reed, I mean, those guys were slugging it out at some of those supercrosses all the way. So it's going to be interesting to see, you know, like, you know, who steps it up this next year. I mean, there's a lot of brand switches going on in the 450 class. So I'm excited to see, you know, like who steps it up with the different program. And, you know, there's going to be some sick battles going on.
Oh man, 100%. And I don't think it's as much of a like the injuries and stuff. Like I feel like Eli probably beats Jett in some motos outdoors, but I don't know that what we're seeing with Jett is like purely a result of other people not being there. You know, like everyone else that, like, imagine if you took Jett out of the picture, right? Like, let's say he's just not in any of these motos. Sexton still beats Ferrandis on the weekend by like 15 seconds. You know, you'd look at Sexton and be like, he is so much better than these other guys. Like, he's the man. Him and Eli went toe to toe last year. Eli's not there, and Chase is just still just bashing these dudes. But there's another guy 20 seconds down the road in front, and then everyone's saying, Eli's not there. Guys are. It's like, well, the only dude that beat Eli last year was Chase, and he's there. And it's like, he might not be 100%, you know, healthy, but it's like he still beat Dylan Ferrandis by, you know, 15 seconds. He still beat Aaron Plessinger. Like, that's the dude that's been on the podium. So yeah, I mean, I just don't know that I buy into like the whole injury thing as much as maybe other people. Maybe other people just want that. Maybe they want that to be the case, because if not, like, the reality is probably pretty gnarly for people to deal with.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, Jett stepped it up. Like, it doesn't matter who's there right now or not. Like, he's the freaking gnarliest dude right now. And you know, you gotta give him credit, because they were planning this thing, like that style, everything to fit the 450 this whole way. And you know, you look at him, he doesn't have many injuries at all. And you know, that's half the battle. And he's gotten to the point where, you know, he's able to be smooth and ramp it up. And you know, he looks so methodical when he rides. Like, he doesn't look like he's just, you know, pinned and getting sketchy and sending it. Like, to me, it looks like he's thinking about every little, you know, throttle blip and move and line the whole way. Like, it's almost like a video game to him, you know. It's crazy looking.
Yeah, but with all that being said, you're probably going to smoke him on a two-stroke at Washougal.
Hey, if I can keep from getting lapped by Jett when I'm on the two-stroke at Washougal, that'll be like a win for me.
So let's talk about that race. So Moto Memes throws down $5,000 for the top finishing two-stroke at Washougal. You're obviously pretty much the first dude to put your hand up for it. And then we start to see like Motorsport is putting in money. And then you had like KTM or Jett with Jets and Donuts said he was putting in some cash. And then you got KTM Group. They basically said if someone wins on one of their bikes, they'll put in another $5,000. So where's the kitty up to right now?
Yeah, you know, it keeps ramping up, and I think, you know, as this the week before Nationals coming up here, I think we're going to see even more guys throwing in money, and it's good to see because the sport needs, some flavor in it. It needs some two-stroke. Like there's so many two-stroke diehards out there, and there's guys who wouldn't touch a 450. They love 250 two-strokes, and so it's going to be awesome to see a bunch of dudes out there shredding on those things. Like they're going to be some dudes absolutely sending it for that money. And Washougal, it's gotten some two-strokes there, like a few of them each year either way. So the West Coast, I think the whole West Coast of pros is going to show up and do that thing. And then you got like Lesher and Birkin and those guys, they're all coming from the East. And all the other East guys are borrowing two-strokes too. So, I mean, let's line them up. Let's do this thing. I'm amped up to race some two-strokes. I'd done it the last few years at Washougal on a 250 two-stroke and just had an absolute blast, and the fans were crazy for it. So to get a bunch of two-strokes out there, I think the fans are going to lose their minds.
Dude, and it's so sick to be doing it at a national. Like, it just means so much more. All you guys could go and race a two-stroke anywhere else, and it would definitely be sick, but not as sick as this. It's almost like you guys are just hijacking this one race, this one day. And yeah, I mean, I think the fans are just fully going to lose their mind, eh?
Oh, absolutely. Like the last few years when I was going around the track, I couldn't even hear the bike running because they were going so crazy. And the other guys that have been racing two strokes at some of the other nationals, I've been hearing the same thing. So hopefully the turnout is sick for all the two-stroke lovers. And I mean, we're ready to throw down on those things for sure. And it's cool to see the industry kind of accepting it so much too, because I mean, there's a lot of points where, everybody's like, oh, two-strokes are dead, two-strokes are old. But now it's kind of switching around to, like two-strokes are sick, like they're hardcore, revving that thing, throwing some roost. They're definitely the underdogs in the 450 class. Like the power is not even, comparable compared to like a factory 450, So, I mean, we're going to be a bunch of bumblebees and the wolves.
So how do you see it playing out? Do you think that you guys are going to, so who's in that you fully know of?
I know Stank Dog, Lesher, Birkin. I mean, there's been rumors of everybody doing it. Like Marv might do it. I think that'd be really cool to see him do it. Justin Barsha, we've heard rumors of him doing it. Don't know if that's true or not. But I think we need some big names to do this thing that, aren't in the championship anyways. And I'm amped up for it. Like get as many big names doing it as we can. And, let's all show down on some two strokes and throw down.
So how do you see the race playing out? Do you think that you guys are all pretty much going to start together? Like, let's say there's 10 or 12 of you guys. Do you think the 450s are going to pretty much dust you off the start and there'll just be a pack of two strokes that are getting around the track for 30 plus two?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Washougal is so weird. It has a weird start there and everything. Like, when I was starting there on the 252 stroke, I was starting like mid-pack or so. And, pretty much just right in the mix of where all the chaos is. Like last year, I crashed on the start in the first moto, picked up, made my way back up to 15th. And I think if there's a place where the two strokes are going to benefit, it's Washougal because it's not necessarily like sandy or deep compared to the upper rounds.
Yeah.
So we should be able to, make some passes and everything. If we're all going to be in a pack or not, hard to say. I think there's definitely going to be some, close battles. But, it's going to be, the five really good factory guys out front, and then, the others, and then two strokes are going to be coming by. And I think that's going to be the real race.
Yeah, dude, I'm hopefully going to be there. So I'm like literally just waiting to get my passport back, and then I'm just going to book a flight and go. I've already booked my accommodation and shit just in case.
Love it.
But man, I'm so excited to just see like the fan response to it, because Washougal is always such a sick national anyway when it comes to the fans, and it's such a beautiful track to kind of go and be a spectator at. So yeah, I mean, I can't wait. I just think it's going to be unreal.
Yeah, for sure. Have you been to Washougal before?
Never, dude. I've never been there.
Man, you're gonna be in for a surprise if you make it out there. And hey, fire up a 2-stroke. Let's go,
dude. I just ain't that good. I would love to be good enough to just get like a respectable 39th, but I'm just not.
Hey, as long as you're having fun, man.
Yeah. Actually, though, I think I'm supposed to be riding the Sunday. The Alpine Stars has like their launch there, so for the 24 gear launch. So I think I might actually get to ride Washougal the day after the National, which I'm not sure how fun that would actually be.
Oh man, you're gonna have a blast. Like, that place is so scenic, and the dirt for the National, so usually it can be pretty slippery, and then for National they bring in a bunch of fresh dirt from around that's hasn't been all worn out and stuff, and it's good. Like, it's tacky. Like, it looks like it is on TV, where it's like during most of the year it can get to be pretty slippery. But yeah, if you're riding it the day after National and they do a little prep on it, like, you're gonna probably have it like the best it's gonna be all year. You're gonna dig it.
So what did you get last year on the 2-stroke at Washougal?
Let's see. So first moto, went down in the first corner, worked my way up to 15th, and then second moto, I hadn't done any Nationals since the one before that, and so
dude,
I was like,
15th is gnarly.
Yeah, so I hadn't done any Nationals since the year before that. So for the second moto, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna click my suspension in. Like, it was getting a little sideways and stuff, so I'm like, yeah, let's go stiffer. And I wasn't thinking necessarily like, hey, the track's gonna get way
rougher,
more torn up. Yeah. And so click that stuff in second moto, and I was like, I got 20th, and I was miserable all the way around that track the whole time, man. So not making that mistake this year, but I had an absolute blast last year, and ripped that YZ252 stroke all the way.
That's so sick. And so what do you reckon? Like, how do you just see this whole 2-stroke race going? Like, is there going to be a bunch of dudes doing like really good on these things? Like, is Washougal a place where you can kind of get around good? Like, if it was happening at Millville with like the huge hills and the sand, or if it was Southwick, like, you're getting buried. But like, do you think that we actually might see some pretty like sick rides? Like, imagine if Marv does it and gets top 10,
Yeah, I mean, it'd be amazing. I mean, put the right guy on a 2-stroke on whichever track suits them the best, and I think they're gonna throw down. It would definitely be sick to see a guy like Marv or somebody who's at the peak of the sport, what they can do on a 2-stroke. So I think that the 2-strokes for that dirt and everything, it's gonna be good for them with a little more hard pack. Not switching around and trying to find lines in the sand. We'll be able to take, some more insides with the ruts that are going to form and stuff, instead of just having to keep all the momentum on the outsides.
And so, do you think dudes are going to get pretty gnarly for the money? Because, like, it's kind of escalated to where it's a pretty good payday for someone.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, you already know I'm going to absolutely send it for that money. And I guarantee you everybody else is too. Like, that's a pretty big payday. And I'm going to throw down everything I've got, both motos. And, either we're going to come out on top, be close, or something's happening.
Do you think that Washougal's one of those kind of like local knowledge tracks too? I think there's some tracks that are, I guess we saw that with Southwick on the weekend. Do you think Washougal's one of those kind of, those ones where it really pays to be a local?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Washougal is the trees and the woods and the sunlight. Like, it can be hard to see there, and it's hard to see the slick spots because usually the slick spots are in the shade. So that can definitely be a little bit tricky for some guys. I don't think it's local knowledge beneficial as much as, you know, a place like Southwick or Millville is, but I could be wrong too on that. But I think, you know, Washougal's just so freaking weird compared to anywhere else. Like, even in Washington, you don't see dirt like that or terrain like that anywhere else unless you're at Washougal.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those just iconic tracks. Just the fact that it's in the trees, the layout, the soil, and, you know, it always has. I can't remember, maybe it was Tyler Keefe. I was on the phone to him the other day, and he was saying, he's like, dude, if you get a good day at Washougal for the National, it's about as good as a motocross event can ever be.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I agree with that. I've seen it before where, like, you know, it rains, and I'm not going to lie, that place in the mud, like, it's not normal Washington mud or anything. It's got an extremely hard, slippery base, and it can be miserable. I remember a few years ago, Barsha was still on his Yamaha, and, you know, they have the Washougal whoops, and it's muddy. And it was raining for his second moto. It was like pretty hard, and he was just sending it through the whoops, just most unreal thing I'd ever seen. And I was just like, dude, freaking gnarly. But yeah, that place in the mud, super tricky. That place when it's nice out, nothing better. So hopefully it keeps nice for this two-stroke race, and it looks like the weather is, but you know, it's always fun to have a mud or something in there too, but man, it'd be rough on the two strokes.
Yeah, dude. So did you get to go back and watch the battles last year that Eli and Chase had there?
Yeah, that one where Chase tipped over and then Eli was behind him, and you know, those guys freaking battled it out. I remember a couple years ago too, it was Dylan Fernandez and Cincerella when they were both in the 250 class, just going back and forth the whole moto. Getting to watch that one in person was pretty unreal too. So that place always makes out for like some really good battles. It seems like, you know, the Americans struggle a little bit more at that track than some of the others do. Just like Marv, man, he's so good at Washougal. You know, watching him there, yeah, he's just short shifting and taking all the right lines, which is you know, pretty cool to see in person. That track's definitely, you know, different than your typical American track.
Yeah, 100%. I think from my perspective, I think that the tracks in America, the way that they prep them, it breeds like sandy motherfuckers because you've got so much traction, the dirt's super deep, and there's always lines. And so if you can be super fit to charge through the bumps, like, you're going to have some really good lines through turns, and then they've got super sick jumps. But I think especially like this year, actually curious to get your opinion on this. This is like a bit of a bike I'm going to start pedaling. I really think that they need to ban the scoop tires unless it's like Southwick or maybe like like literally just pick rounds where it's like, okay, you can run a scoop here, and here, and that's it. Everything else has to be a normal tire, because you look at Parla, right? That place looked like a slot car track because there was scoop tires on not sand, basically. And it's like they run them so that they can get the start, but everywhere else, it's really not the kind of track where you need to run a scoop. And then you just end up with like this completely grooved out slot car track that the guys can't really race. And I think what made me think of that is the point that you brought up about Washougal. It's like it always seems to have really good racing, but it's because it's not ripped crazy deep. Like, it's just not, that's not the way that soil works. So you're able to have guys moving around in multiple lines, and like, you don't even have to run a line in a turn and you can make it work. And it's like, for the guys that have really good throttle control and really good ability to find traction, they're the ones that go fast. And I think that, yeah, just after watching the Nationals this year, especially this year, it's become super obvious. I just think like, we just need to regulate and just say like, hey, these are the tracks you can run a scoop, the rest you can't. And I honestly think we'll have much better racing as a result of it.
Yeah, 100%. Like you were saying, a lot of guys are running the thing just for the start. So I've ran a scoop before just to try and get a good start. And I mean, it's really good everywhere except corners. And it just, like you kind of said, I mean, it chews up the track quite a bit, especially on these ones where, it develops a rut and the dirt's not necessarily loose and it'll slot car it around. So that is kind of an interesting thing to think about. I haven't really thought about that before. I mean, in Europe, they're mostly running scoops though, right?
Yeah, they do the same thing in Europe basically these days, and it's just doing the same thing. Like, I just feel like the tracks are just getting absolutely destroyed more than they ever have. And yeah, I mean, I think in Europe, like they don't really prep the tracks in the same way that they kind of do here. Like Trentino's like gravel, and the start straight is like really nice. It's like they brought in really nice dirt for the start straight, super deep. But then the rest of the tracks, yeah, pretty much just like this rocky, gravelly soil. But I mean, in all other forms of racing, you get told what tires you can run. You know, it's a free for all in motocross and supercross. And, and I've even said before that I think that there should be like a supercross only tire to try and avoid those tracks getting so blown out as well. But yeah, to me, it's like super easy call to make. You go Southwick, you can run one. Millville, you can run one. Redbud, you can run one. That's it. Because, you're looking for an advantage off the start. But if nobody else has that advantage, fair, you know what I mean? Fair game. And I just think it'll make the racing better.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely I see what you're talking about there. Like the tracks these last few years have definitely developed like quite a bit differently. And like you look back at the two-stroke era, the tracks were more like, braking bumps and acceleration bumps and not necessarily like massive ruts. And like even you see like Stewart and Carmichael when they were racing, I mean, there was nasty ruts, but it seemed like a lot of the tracks of that era, they were able to kind of float around a little bit more, and the battles seemed to be better. I could definitely be wrong on that, but I think you're definitely right. Like the tracks can get like chewed out in the corners, and then there's only one good main line, which is kind of like makes the racing a little more boring for sure.
Well, I think that the second moto at Parla was the best example of it, right? Like, Jett gets out front, gets a start, runs the pace, covers the inside lines, and forces Sexton to pick. So basically, he put him in the position of, if you want to pass me, it has to be on the outside. You can't come up any insides, because if Jett's in the line, there's no other way, like there's no line you can take now. There's just this line. This is on the inside. So if you need to pass me, you're going to have to go around the outside, which means you're going to have to take a massive risk. And that line's not developed. It's a longer way around. And it's super sketchy because you don't really have that much grip because you're running a scoop tire and it's 330 at Parla. So it's like, I just think that moto right there, if anyone is like thinking I'm crazy, go and watch that moto from that perspective, and I think that you'll start to kind of like see the point. But I think that's back to your point, is like why Washougal always is so good, is because guys can move around the track.
Yeah, 100%. Like the even in Supercross these last few years, like they've been trying to make the tracks more racer friendly, to pass and all that, and it's interesting because a lot of the tracks that are more technical seem to be almost the safer ones, because they guys are going slower, like the big rhythms, the huge corners and all that, and the ones where they're more flat and everything, guys seem to be sending it harder and getting more hurt. That's just my opinion on it. But for outdoors, even with the tracks, being like slot car almost, it's been, the guys seem to be going slower, but the racing isn't as good being like that. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And I mean, you go back to, like you said, the like Ricky's last kind of years on a two-stroke, and it's like you just can move around the track. And there was actually the Trey Kennard podcast, which I think that comes out tomorrow, but we were talking about Millville 2013 when he had that crazy battle with James, and the first thing that he said when I asked him about it was, it was just like a weird year. They didn't rip it as deep so you could that was one of the best motocross races in history. Is like, yeah, I guess like the speeds are up, but you guys can go fast. I think the stuff that makes it dangerous is like these crazy ruts and these crazy, like, just, it looks like an explosion's gone off on the track at the end of, you know what I mean? Like, it actually looks like, it doesn't look like a motocross track these days. You walk a track after a national and it looks like a fucking bomb's gone off. I think that's what's dangerous. Yeah,
100%. Like you were saying, it looks like a freaking bomb went off at some of these nationals. I mean, there's parts everywhere, and pretty much goggles, all this stuff. It's carnage. It's like a war zone out there, and to find that fine line, I think over the years, the tracks and the AMA felt, all those guys they're trying to find that perfect happy medium, and I know that's a tricky thing to get to. So. It's weird to see what they try at some of these things.
Well, anyway, so that's my little rant for the day. But I'd love to just see what would happen if they just said, like, we can only run a scoop at these certain events. What other, like, now that you've kind of got this deal with Red Bull and you're gonna kind of be able to just pick and do whatever you want, like, do you have some stuff that's on your bucket list of events, races, like things that you want to do now that you can?
So basically I just want to try a little bit of everything. Like, I want to try some hard enduro. I want to do maybe a couple supercrosses, maybe a couple outdoors, but I want to do the weird stuff too. Like, I want to try Ayresburg just to try it. I want to try like a Tennessee knockout just to try it. I want to try, flat track and do it all. And I want to do it on weird bikes too. And that's kind of the goal right now. To set all that stuff up and, just really change it up. I want to challenge myself in new ways.
Do you have anything that's like locked in at this point? Like that for sure that you're going to do? Like, I'd love to see you do Ayresburg. I'd love to see you do like Western Beach Race. That'd be super sick. Like, I think that there's definitely a bunch of cool stuff that you could do.
Pretty much this year, it's kind of late into the year right now. Like, Ayresburg just happened, but we're planning on trying to do that next year, and some weird niche races too. I want to do that kind of stuff, and I want to ride weird bikes with pros too. Like, I want to get Roxon on an RM85. I want to ride with him on those things, or just things like that. We're working on getting these dudes on weird bikes that they had some awesome times on, and it's going to be exciting here.
Dude, that was literally going to be one of my questions, was would you smoke Roxon on an RM80?
I think the thing with Roxon and anybody of that caliber, like, even if I was faster for a lap, they could watch me and mimic it and then put their own twist on it. That's why they're a champion. Like, they will throw down however much they need to be the fastest dude. So it would be really fun to ride with them just to see, what that would look like. And, he was a beast on those things when he was a kid, and I'm sure now he'd be ridiculous. So, that'd be fun. And then, I want to see, we think it'd be fun to take a top super mini kid now and then, put me on a super mini and, see what that would look like too. Like, how my speed would be compared to, a kid on super mini. Would that kid be way faster because that's all he rides, or would the pro skill translate over, or would I be too big and heavy? I want to find that stuff out. I think it'd be a blast. Dude,
yeah, that would be sick. What kind of track would you think like, let's say you and Roxon do this RM80 deal. Like, what kind of track would you want to do it on? What's the sweet spot there?
I think something where it's not just going to be wide open the whole time. We want some berms, some jumps, nothing crazy, but something that we can throw down on and, aren't just going down some straightaways pinned. Having it a little bit technical is always a blast, especially on those small two strokes. So, in a perfect world, it would be big berms.
I wonder when the last time he rode an 85 was.
That would be interesting. Who knows? I mean, for all we know, he could be freaking out back on that RM85 every day for all we know, not saying anything. But, yeah, that'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, dude, I'd love to see that happen. And Daniel Ricciardo's favorite bike is a CRF 110. So I feel like you and Danny need to try and do some kind of like 110 challenge. I feel like you might be slightly more skilled than him currently, so maybe there's like a handicap that we need to make. But look, I don't think the gap's too extreme. I think that we could like handicap it in some way that made that a cool race too.
Yeah, the thing that's fun with like those 110s and stuff, like especially if it's two stock 110s, is like to get a gap on somebody is so hard because the bike is so slow and it's like all about momentum. So like even if one dude is faster, it's like not that much faster because there's not that much time to be made up. And that's why 110s are so much fun riding with everybody and, super slow bikes because, you can be throwing down hard, but you ain't getting away from anybody unless you're really doing something special.
Yeah. Well, dude, he rips too on like a 110. Like he actually has got some serious game on there. So you could be right. Like it could just be closer than what you'd think purely based on like the horsepower of the bike. It's kind of like a rental karts, right? Like when all your mates go to like go-karts and they're all super slow, everyone just holds the thing pinned. Oh yeah,
100%. It's so funny because every time we go go-karting, everybody's thinking in the back of their minds, are like, yeah, I'm going to smoke everybody. Like, it's not even going to be close. And then by the end, like, everybody's within, like, a super small gap. And, like, one buddy was faster one and then slowest the other. It's like, that's what's fun. And that's what pit bikes can be like, too, on those stockers.
Yeah. So have you got any bike builds in the works at the moment that you're working on?
We've always got some cool bike builds going on. Right now, we've currently got a couple 90s YZ125s that we're working on. We got a 89 KX125, RM 252 stroke. A little bit of it all, man. We're enjoying that 90s era is so much fun. And I got a KTM 380 the other day. I've had a bunch of people telling me that like those 382 strokes are glorious. They're like a mix between a 500 and a 300. So I'm really excited to try that. But sad part about that is like I got that thing. I had my buddy pick it up. The guy who previously owned it said that the Kickstarter turn spring was broken and that he just bump started it to ride it. And I was like, okay. And so I get it home and I push it down the hill and I go to bump start it. And that spring came off or something, one of the gears caught in the motors and it caught the gear and broke the cases, broke the kickstart shaft, broke everything. Like before I even rode it, all the oil on the ground. And I was like, man, dude. And so I got looking online and I was like, yeah, there's got to be some parts for them. There are none of those kickstart shafts anywhere for those things. And I made an Instagram video. I'm just like, I was like, hey, anybody got one of these? And everybody's like, oh yeah, this shop's got one. And they've all got it listed and they're like, no, we don't got those things. So still on the hunt for that. And that's kind of, the tricky part with some of these older bikes, but that's what makes it fun too, is hunting this stuff down. And, it's tricky, just like CR 480 shift forks we had to get out of Europe and all that stuff. But that's what's kind of cool with social media too, is like you can put the word out and everybody's kind of hunting around and it's cool stuff in the works.
Well, I need a 1998 CR 250 power valve setup, so If anyone out there, because I got the head all like water blasted and stuff, and then the guy lost all the parts for the power valve, all the spring and shit. Yeah, so I'm bummed on that. So how many bikes would you say you own at this point?
So a lot of people see me ripping all sorts of different bikes and everything. Like, some of them are my buddies, some of them are BBR developed bikes, some of them are Dirt Bike Magazine bikes, and then some of them are just bikes that people drop off, that they're just done
so
with. Like,
wild.
The way we've gotten a lot of these bikes is like, I'll put the word out, like, we're looking for this bike or parts for this bike. And if it's like any sort of two-stroke mini, everybody still has all their parts from growing up and stuff, and like bikes blown up and stuff that they were literally going to take to the dump. We'll take that stuff and we'll piece a bike together out of it and everything. Like, I got this, I love this 2002 CR125, right? And I got this thing for $200 from this kid, and the swing arm was like crushed in, and then he blew it up and he dropped the motor as he took it out and broke the case.
Oh.
Got the swing arm fixed. My dad welded up the motor. Ride that bike every day, and we just look for deals like that where guys have something they feel like it's too wrecked for anybody else to take. We'll take it, and we've come up with quite a lot of bikes over the years there.
Yeah, dude, I love the whole bike build thing so much these days. Like, especially, I feel like it's the older I get too, the more that I appreciate it. And especially, like, we're about to enter the electric era. Have you rode a Stark yet?
I have not.
Bro, it's about to blow your brain out of your head. Like, when you ride one of those things for the first time, you're gonna shit yourself. And we're about to enter that era, where it's like the concept of like changing oil and doing valve shims and like gearbox, all that is, we're gonna like start to lose a lot of that. And I think that the nostalgia that we're all gonna feel for like work, I think that there's gonna be a big industry coming in people kind of like wanting to get their hands dirty again. Like, right now it's like almost a chore where I don't change my oil enough as I should. I don't do bike, like my throttle cable's kind of sticking a bit. I'm like, fuck it, whatever. Like, I'm just going to go ride. But
just going with it.
Yeah, but I think that over the next, like the next kind of 10 years, I think what the industry of fixing bikes will be is like people doing like what you're doing, getting an old bike, taking it, doing a full rebuild, doing all the work themselves, because it's like they're probably going to have an electric bike that they're going to spend most of their time riding. So like they're just going to be able to have this thing in the shed in a million pieces and take however long to kind of put it back together. But dude, I mean, that's some of the most enjoyable things I do, is like piecing a bike together from start and seeing it come up and having it work good and having the colors come together just right and all the parts that you wanted to have on. I mean, it's such like a dope part of the sport, and I think that's one of the things I really enjoy with you, is like how much effort you put into that stuff.
Yeah, we love it. Like, me, my dad, my fiance Claire, we're out in the shop every night, like piecing these things together, and we have a blast. Like, finding the stuff and finding weird bikes that people think suck and like are actually pretty good, and we have a blast just getting dirty, getting this stuff together. And it's like you said with the electric stuff, it's going to be interesting because it's going to be more like, if you want to dial in the bike, it's all electronic, and you're almost going to have to be like a full-on computer specialist to mod those things out and make them run good, instead of you're not going to be out there porting a cylinder. You're going to be mapping that thing for whatever power.
Are you excited for the electric thing, or do you already think that you were born in the wrong time period?
Like we were saying, late 80s, that's when I think the best time was, but I could see the beneficial part of the electric bikes for the industry as far as like, there can be more tracks places and, pretty much just more areas where there's noise restrictions, all that. I know that's really hard in some of the European parts and all that. And, once they get the batteries a little bit better, I know that they're still struggling on, time for some of those. But as far as the only thing that like really worries me about the electric stuff is the racing part. Like I know that they're going to find a way to make that exciting at some point, when electric is dominant or if it becomes dominant. But, I just don't feel like it's going to be the same. But, maybe it's a different type of racing or, different type of category for all of that. Cause I don't see the love of everybody's, real engine power going away.
Yeah. And to be honest, like as much as I love those bikes, I do feel the same thing, like there is part of what's special about Anaheim Stadium is the fucking sound of all those bikes just revved on the start line and going into the first corner. But it's funny though, and this might sound lame as hell, but now when I ride a normal bike, I'm like, dude, this shit's so noisy. Like this is a lot. Like when you go from you do a 30-minute moto on the Stark and it's like pretty peaceful, like you can hear your tires moving, you can hear your suspension moving, you can there's so many other things that enter the picture that are just completely drowned out by noise and vibration. And so as lame as it sounds, like there is a big part of me where it's like it's a much more nicer experience to ride one of those bikes. But yeah, when you line 40 of those up, I just don't know. I don't know if the impact is the same in a stadium or at a national when there's just no sound associated with it.
Yeah, 100%. And, I think the cool part about electric eventually here is, if somebody wants the bike to feel slower or faster, it's going to be easy for them. Like for the general guy to go get a bike, they're going to hop on that thing and it's going to be a lot easier than they hop on a 450, 450 is a 450. That's
and it ain't
what
changing.
They're doing. Yeah, it ain't changing. So for stuff like that, I could definitely see it. And, but yeah, for the racing, I want it to be mean, I want that power and sound.
Gas.
Yeah. The adrenaline right there,
Yeah, but I mean, it is wild though, dude. Like, I don't know how good Claire rides or if she rides that much, but you'll be able to go and ride that. Let's say you got a Starkvarg 80 horsepower setting and you'll be like going, holy shit, like how can I ride this thing? And then you go put it on 20 horsepower for her and she can go ride the same bike 2 seconds later, completely safe, hand controls, like the whole deal. I think that side of things, like, I don't know, there's just so many advantages that are going to come from it, and it's just going to be like a balancing act.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to see where the sport goes these next few years developing with all that. And, it's crazy. It's cool to see KTM still like developing their 2-strokes and stuff still.
100%.
With them, doing the fuel injection and all that. I'm happy to see that, none of that's going away as this new era is kind of coming through. But, I'm excited, man. These next 15 years for the sport, it's going to be pretty crucial.
Dude, I think I should try and get a Stark to your place. I feel like the Stark edit from the backyard would probably do pretty good.
For sure. I mean, the people seem to dig rocks and ride that thing for sure. And I'm always down to ride whatever. I had one guy bring like a super mini style electric bike up there, and it was pretty fun. My audience, they're all into 2-strokes and everything. They're like, no way, no, don't do it, man. And I was like, I'm just riding everything, guys. Like, I'm just having a blast, but definitely going to be some diehard, engine people the whole way this as the electric stuff comes, and I'll be one of them. But I'm not opposed to riding one.
Yeah, it's just such like a it's almost like the Second Amendment of motorsports. You know what I mean? It's like no matter what arguments there are on both sides, it's like freedom stops here.
Yeah.
and I feel like that's like the motocross, like no electric, freedom. Like we want to be free.
Exactly.
So you raced the Harley, and I was watching the edit that you did from the Harley. You've raced with my boy Jakey Masters.
Yeah, dude, he's awesome. Like I met him at Pit Bike of Nations this last year, and I was like, dude, this dude is hilarious. Like, he's funny. And then, I heard he was on that Suburban Motors Harley Davidson team, and I was like, oh, heck yeah, like, this is gonna be a blast. And yeah, man, we had some fun. Like, he hopped on that XR 1200, and he was ripping it like pretty quickly, and was like competitive on it, and he's gonna send it. And so at the last round, like second day, he was battling hard for this third place, and this dude came in and washed them both out, and he was fired up, man. Like he's passionate, and it's good to see. Like, he's a racer,
Yeah, dude. Have you ever seen his pit bike track at his house?
Yeah, the thing looks insane. Like, the dude can ride so good on those.
Bro, he can ride. He's kind of, dude, if he lived in America and he was like full time over there doing like YouTube and stuff, like I think he would actually get pretty popular, because he can ride everything good. Like, he rips moto, like motocross. Dude can hit all freestyle, like does massive whips, like sends it on a pit bike. The wheelie stuff that he does on the Harleys, like he's a really, really talented dude.
Yeah, all around talented on everything, and his personality is really good too. And he's been spending a lot of time over here in America, so hopefully so far it's been working out really good for him. So he's finding a good place over here, and like you said, YouTube or something like that, he would be super successful at. And it's been sick. Like, he's so skilled on those Harleys, like doing the stunt stuff too. Like, whatever he hops on, dude's got talent. Yeah, it blows me away. What did you think about was that pretty much the first time you were doing any road stuff? Yeah, so last year, right after Supercross, Rob Bidos, he hit me and was like, hey, like, do you want to race a Harley? And I was like, sure, why not? And so we flew out to Utah, did it. It's called a Bagger Racing League. I just do like the lightweight twins class, and I hopped on that thing, and I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I don't ride a street bike at home or anything. Like, I've got a moped is about it. And, like, I wasn't even close to like, doing anything in practice. And then by the time the racing started, I was like, okay, I got to figure this thing out. Like, I'm just going to throw down. It might get a little sketchy, but I was able to win that. And then did around in Milwaukee, and they had, some other moto guys coming to do it. Like Cody Gilmore, he showed up, and he was really good on it too. He had done some in the past, one or two, and he was good. Like, me and him kind of battled out. He beat me there. And so, like, it's been super fun. And we did this last round in Pittsburgh, and me, Cody, and Jake, we're just having a blast out there ripping on those things.
Yeah, it's so different to go from motocross to dirt to those things. I mean, the technique, the style, there's like, the track doesn't change, and it's all about hitting apexes. It's a whole different experience. And I mean, even, like in moto, you're sort of like leaning with the bike in a sense, but in the road racing, it's like you're leaning away from it. And yeah, it's a crazy different thing. But I'm surprised that more guys don't try it from moto, because I definitely think it helps it would help your riding. I mean, there's a guy, Troy Herfoss, he's one of the ASBK He rides for Factory Honda here in Australia, and I've been riding motocross with him a lot lately. He's doing the national at QMP, like our local national, and I mean, he rips so hard on a moto from just like years and years and years of road racing, and like the way that he looks at turns and the lines that he picks when he rides, like there's so much to learn in that crossover.
Oh, 100%. Like I feel like the road racing, it's like big go-kart racing where you're looking for the momentum the whole time. Where are you going to sweep around this corner? Your line choice is like super critical. Like I feel like I'm thinking a lot more riding on the road than I am on a dirt bike. It could be just because I'm, new to it, but it's definitely beneficial. And like you said, like on a moto bike, you're leaning with the bike. And I kept doing that, and I would like scrape the pipe and like get all sketchy. So it's like you said, it's like a completely different feel, but it's beneficial for moto at the same time. And it's crazy like how it kind of crosses over. More guys need to do that if there was a path to do it, for sure.
Yeah, I just think that it's like probably pretty hard to have a track bike for road racing, and like you're kind of getting expensive at that point. I'm sure everyone would do it, but I mean, for me, like I did a kind of a Ducati ambassador thing for a couple years in Australia, and so that's the only reason. Like it wasn't even on my radar. Like I never thought to even do it, and I don't know that many moto guys do. I don't know if you'd ever really thought about doing a track day or whatever until they hit you up, but yeah, once I did it, I was like, holy shit, this is actually really, really fun. And I want to do a lot more of it. Yeah,
100%. And it's like, you look at it from the outside looking in, you're like, oh, the track's the same. Each lap you go around, like how hard can it be? Like you're just got to send it into the corners further and everything. You got to finesse that thing all the way around the track. And it was funny. We were talking about, the track staying the same. Right as I was saying that, at the last round, it started dumping rain. And so then they're putting rain tires on and stuff. And I was like, okay, this is a completely different thing. And I was worried for sure because, moto, it's just going to get muddy. Whereas on a road course, you're like, am I going to hydroplane, or like, how's this thing going to react? If I lean it over too far, I'm done. So yeah, definitely, some weird aspects to it that you don't think of from the outside looking in.
Oh man, and they crash so different. Like I crashed one. Have you thrown one down on the road yet?
I haven't yet. I've been a little like timid to do that.
I was in Vietnam doing this like tour across the country with my family, and it just started raining, so we'd kind of like backed it off. No one was going too crazy, but I hit like a spotted diesel on the road, and like my front end tucked so quick, and luckily I was wearing a full face. My face just like smashed on the road, and all I could see was just like the bitumen. I'm just like, it was like the gnarliest sound. All the metal was scraping on the road. The bike ended up sliding fully across the road into a ditch, and then I like went over into the ditch, and I was just like, holy shit, that was like actually traumatic. Like I thought I was gonna die just based off like the sound and like how quick everything happened. I was like, man, this shit ain't no joke.
No, it doesn't do the bike any good either when that happens at all.
Nah, but I mean, I've done a few track days since then, and on like the proper race bikes and stuff, and just so much fun. And even though the track doesn't change, but then it's almost like it flips, right? It's like, because the track doesn't change every lap, you change every lap. Like it's so hard to be perfect and consistent, and I think that's what the game becomes in the road racing stuff, whereas in moto, like that's kind of taken out of it because you're adjusting constantly to the track, whereas once that variable's out of the picture, it's just pretty much all on you and the way that you're riding the bike. It's a cool experience.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that was crazy to me is with the track being the same every time, you can push it just that little bit further because you can rely on, there's not going to be a rock or a rut that caved in or, a huge braking bump or acceleration bump. So you can just send it a little bit further every time. And I think that's why like so many guys do have some issues on the course because they're just like, I can just hold it on a little longer. I can, brake a little bit less. And it's a tricky game with that stuff,
So do you have any more races coming up this year that you're going to do on the baggers?
So there was supposed to be one this weekend that I was supposed to do, but I'm getting ready for Washougal National, and I'm going to skip this next bagger round. There is another one in California, though, a little later into the year. So if everything works out, I'll be at that one. But, yeah, definitely bummed out to miss this next one. But I'm sure Cody Gilmore and Jake are going to, rip it up even harder. It'll be sweet.
And have you got any plans to ride like more of a race bike kind of vibe, like get on an actual sports bike instead of the bag up?
So Andy DeBringo, he lives up in Washington too, and he does all sorts of road race stuff, and he's been trying to get me to get on one of his bikes and go for a day out at the Ridge. And I would absolutely love to do that if I could time it right and get out there and everything. I would love to try. And I also had another buddy that said I could do a track day on one of their street bikes out at Pacific Raceways. So if the timing's right, I'll hop on one for sure. I want to try it all.
Dude, that's so sick. And before you go, we got to talk about Straight Rhythm last year. That was a pretty sick event. And you talk about like throwing down. What was that whole experience like in Huntington Beach? And I'm imagining at that point, was the Red Bull helmet like kind of on the menu and you were like really hoping to prove yourself at that event, or was it like not really in the picture then? And like where did the whole Red Bull deal fit into Straight Rhythm? Because you were definitely on like a pretty epic level at that race.
Yeah, so basically the Red Bull deal I had no idea about at that point. It wasn't even in the back of my mind. And I honestly don't think it had to do too much with that race. I think it's more of just, doing a little bit of everything, but it was definitely like I wanted to win that race so bad. And I was in Europe and France for that GSM Yamaha team doing the World Supercross stuff. And so I didn't really test almost at all going into Straight Rhythm, and I had a YZ125 and a KTM. And like Dirt Bike Magazine, they helped me build both those things, and we thought it'd be fun to like go between the two. And I was asking everybody else, they were all on KTM 150s, and when I talked to them, they're like show up on a big bore 125 or else it won't hit the jumps. Or like we're telling everybody that, and it's called a 150 class. The YZ was a true 125, and it was fast. Like it would have got done. I asked everybody else, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're all on big bore." So
really?
I'm like, I'll do that. Yeah, and I was like, okay, I'll ride the KTM then, and I did that, and sent it, and it was good. Got sketchy in the whoops when it started raining, but it was fun.
That event is such a cool event that they do. I feel like it gets so much good publicity. It's like it's such a pure form of racing. The guys that are there really want to be there, and I feel like there's always like some really cool moments from that race too. Like Kenny Scrub probably took it away last year. Like that was just ridiculous. But that's just such a rad event in general.
Yeah, that's always the two times I've done it, it's been my favorite event I've ever done. Not just racing it, but seeing the top guys on two strokes, just like seeing Kenny on a two stroke and Marv on a two stroke and, AP and those guys. So cool to see them hop on, and race those at a really high level. Like I remember watching, Dungy on that thing. I was impressed because, when else would you see the dude on a two stroke? And, that was back a few years ago in RV, and all those guys were doing it. And then, one of the sickest events I've ever done for sure.
Is it like what makes it? Obviously, there's no turns, but like, what does it do to the way you have to ride? Like, is it hard to get through the lane? Is like the intensity gnarly? Like, what makes it different?
Yeah, it's super high intensity. Like I basically wasn't breathing the whole way down that straightaway because you're throwing down, and the start was really important, getting out of the gate and getting over the on-offs and the triples on those bikes was definitely like really key. Like consistency was key because we were struggling hitting some of those triples and things. So to be able to, seat bounce, and then when it started raining, like I believe the right side was slower when it started raining. So then that came into effect, and you got to throw down on both. Luckily, I was able to find some lines on that right side once it started raining and make it work too. But definitely like a completely different thing than like turns, because also you don't got to worry about a pile up in the first corner. It is literally just you and the bike and one other guy, but he's not even in your same lane. So that I really enjoyed that aspect of it, because you can really, showcase what you got going and not have all of this other stuff going on around you.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see the kinds of guys that it plays into their strengths, and like Marv, I mean, he's won it. I think he's literally won every single time he's done it, but it's like, what is he doing different? You probably wouldn't see it as obvious in an actual Supercross race, like you said, with all the other variables, with everything else. But you put him on one lane, straight rhythm section, and he's just the best dude in the world. He's just got some crazy little bit of technical difference that he's doing that's just like letting him be faster than everyone else. And you wouldn't ever see that anywhere else.
No, not at all. I mean, his timing and the momentum he was carrying all the way around that track was insane, all the way through the track, not even around the track, So, he was just pushing through and just doing little bits of stuff. And, it's so funny with him is like he doesn't look like he's going that fast as he's doing it, but he's just doing it so precisely. And, I mean, like you said, I mean, he's won it like every time that he's done it. It's unreal.
Yeah. Well, I hope so bad that we get to see him at Washougal in the two-stroke class. I mean, that would be so sick.
Yeah, 100%. It'd be so great for our sport. And, we need some more dudes like that aren't in the championship hunt. Like, let's get them out there. Let's give the fans what they want and give them a show.
Do you think that it could be a bit of a bigger thing? Like, do you think that there's room for there to be a series within the series? Like, it's one round this year where, the guys at Moto Memes kind of cooked up the concept or whatever, and they've thrown in for this one event. But do you think that there's a way that this is like a proof of concept and we go like, okay, there's 6 rounds next year, or there's 5 rounds where we're doing this two-stroke deal, there's an extra payout for the guys, and then it just incentivizes dudes to be on a two-stroke, to be at, let's say they're not at all the nationals, like could there be a two-stroke national champion at the end of half of the nationals? Like, do you think that this could actually play into something like that?
It'd be amazing. Like, let's hope that this Washougal round goes really well so that there can be something played up. I don't know if we'll see, like the AMA or MX Sports ever do like a championship inside of a championship, just because, Suzuki, Kawasaki, Honda, they don't have two strokes, and I don't think that they would necessarily be stoked on that going down. But hard to say, like, it'd be fantastic for the sport, and you would hope to see something like that. But, it takes a guy like Moto Memes or somebody like that to get this stuff organized, even if it's not, the official like AMA or MX Sports doing it. It takes somebody like Moto Memes to get this stuff done, which is, I'm stoked he's doing it.
Yeah. Same, man. Well, yeah, I'm excited. Hopefully I'll get to make it there to watch it in person. I think it's gonna be a pretty sick weekend. I'm sure that there's probably gonna be a lot of fans that maybe weren't going to go to the nationals this year that are actually going to bring themselves out to watch that race.
Oh, for sure. Everybody I know, they were at the start of the season, they're like, yeah, we don't know if we're going to go out there this year. And now that the two-stroke thing's going, I've got every single person like, dude, we're going out there. We're going to watch the two-stroke shred. Like, who knows who might show up on two-stroke? And I'm like, yeah, let's freaking get everybody out here. It's going to be awesome. So, yeah, I think it's going to be huge. I hope you're there. And I hope you get to ride that next day, too. You'd be stoked.
Dude, yeah, I'm pretty frothing for it. Actually, before I go too, you got any Glen Helen tips? We're doing World Vets at the end of the year, so I'm chasing all the Glen Helen tips that I can. I know you did that thing on that Twisted 300 this year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you won that. You won. You're the two-stroke world champ this year. We actually probably should just talk about that.
Yeah, it was good. This last year we went down there. Jamie at Twisted had a YZ that I could ride, and I hadn't ridden Glen Helen in a very long time. Went out there, and the locals have that place so dialed. I mean, they're out there every Tuesday and Thursday, getting her done. So I was like, I didn't really know what I was doing. Got out there and. The thing that I did, like, I watched all the locals, like the lines that they were taking, like I kind of jumped in behind them just to see what I could learn. And then, I had the suspension getting down those hills. I had to actually stiffen it up quite a bit so that it wouldn't kick me going down the hills. And but that race was good. Like, Surratt was shredding on his CR252 stroke. Like, he knows that place good. He knows his bike good. And so I was worried. And first moto, I felt, great, got an okay start, kind of got in behind him, didn't have enough time to make a pass. And then second moto, I hole shot, and then he kind of he worked his way into second. So, like, we kind of reversed roles, but I was feeling good, like was able to win the overall, so I was stoked.
Yeah, so what makes Glen Helen such like a local knowledge spot, do you think?
Just the weird lines and the weird hills, like just the braking bumps. Like, it gets really hard pack in weird spots, like especially going up those hills, because you'd think you'd just, pin it, but they've got those shelves. So if you land wide open, you'll almost do a full spin out, which is like, it's tricky. And then the track looks nothing like the nationals that you're used to seeing there. The nationals, they'll have huge jumps, huge berms and everything. And then, you'll show up for like, a normal Glen Helen race or something. And it's like, it's pretty flat. So that always throws me off, because I'm like, it doesn't look like the TV,
Yeah.
I mean, they just have that huge hill in the back, and then it's like some S corners and stuff. And so, like, it in the locals, like I said, freaking have it dialed. So it's tricky. Like, that's a weird track.
What's the technique that you're running down those hills?
I'm usually like pretty high in the gears, so that I don't have a lot of RPM going down the hills, because the RPM, I mean, kind of works like a rear brake even on the two-stroke, so it kicks. So I was rocking a high gear and then kind of going way off to the sides, one side or the other, because the middle where everybody goes, it's getting all braking bumped out. But the problem is, if you're running down the sides of that big old hill going down, and then you're kind of set up bad for the corner at the bottom, depending if they have it, in an L shape or a U. So you have to think about that too, because they switched that up. So it's pretty much that. Like, the place is actually pretty slippery. It always throws me off.
Yeah. We've been just full training, and like, I got all my boys that I grew up racing with. We're all gonna go and do it. So I'm like trying to get the little bits of knowledge. But I think it's one of those places you just got to go and do the motos on the Tuesdays and Thursdays with all the other guys and kind of get used to it.
Yeah, yep, I'm with you there. It's just like any track. Follow the guys that are there all the time, and you'll get it down the most.
Yeah. Well, hey, dude, I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's been super cool to, I guess, hear a bit of the backstory, and man, I'm just stoked for you to be on the Red Bull program. There's definitely like a giant leap that guys take in their career when they they kind of get in with the people that they've got there. And I think that you've done so well to get to this point on your own, and I think that now it's like the sky's the limit. And I think we're all, as motocross fans, we're all very lucky that there's guys like you out there that have a bit of a different vision. And I also just think like the message that you've got as well of ride anything. It doesn't have to be the newest bike. It doesn't have to be the best bike. You can have fun on all these things. I genuinely think you're spreading an awesome message for people as well. So
yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And this is just a start. I'm excited to do some really cool stuff, and it's a pretty sick opportunity, and I'm not gonna waste it. So heck of a time, and I really hope to see you at Washougal. It's gonna be a blast.
Dude, I really hope I'm there as well.
It's gonna be sick. 2 strokes, baby.
We're excited to announce the launch of our new membership site, gypsytales.com, packed with exclusive content and perks that you won't find anywhere else. This is your chance to become a part of the Gypsy Gang. And as a special bonus, if you sign up to an annual membership, you'll be entered into the draw to win our custom-built TC125. Gypsy Gang.